This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate what if Naruto's team got banished after Sasuke Retrieval arc. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
He was limited to staring at the azure sky because of everything that had transpired in the past few days. He was not really to blame. He had just been exiled from Konoha no Sato village, where he lived. He lost his comrades in arms, his friends, and other Konoha shinobi. The person he believed he had loved since he was a young child crushed and humiliated him. Who was this shinobi in exile? He wore an orange tracksuit with blue around the waist and on the upper shoulders, a white swirl with a tassel on the left side, a red swirl on the back, a big white collar, orange pants, and blue sandals. He was 4 feet 8, which is fairly short for his age. Yes, Naruto Uzumaki, Konoha's show. Off, number 1 unpredictable. Noisy Ninja has been exiled for the successful retrieval of Sasuke Uchiha. He has blonde, spiky hair and blue eyes. 3 birthmarks that resemble whiskers are located on each cheek. Did those old fools really think he'd come back voluntarily? He asked himself. Rewind. Out of the 6 Konoha shinobi sent to retrieve Sasuke Uchiha, the last, loyal, Uchiha of Konoha, 5 have been successfully brought home, while the other 2 were at the very least in intensive care. One had only minor injuries, and the other 2 had severe injuries. 2 bloody and ragged bodies were on their way to Konoha. The other was carrying the less injured of the 2. Sasuke was wearing white shorts and the ragged remnants of what had once been a blue, short-sleeved shirt with a high collar and the Uchiha crest on the back. Both were soaked in water and partially covered in blood. His black chin-length hair was covered in blood, though strands of hair were covering his face, but it didn't matter because it was all bruised up and swollen anyhow. His skin tone was pale, as opposed to his normally fair skin tone. You can infer that he has some fractured and broken bones and muscle ligaments. A look at his chest revealed a high percentage of some broken ribs and damaged organs, and he is the less injured of the 2. It is a miracle for this person to be alive and to be walking around with someone who is solely dependent on his willpower and determination. His left shoulder and other exposed skin areas were covered in burn marks, and his clothes were painted in blood, or what was left of them, anyway. And he had a horrifying hole in his chest, where his heart would have ruptured a few centimeters in. His right lung would have been destroyed by a few more to the left, and part of his left lung was still attempting to heal. Blood just keeps oozing out of the wound as if it were a leaking faucet. The 9-tailed demon fox was doing everything it could, but it was only able to heal the minor wounds on his vessel, slow down the process of blood loss in the major ones, and keep him alive. With a raspy voice, he addressed his passenger. He, I told you, I'd bring you back Ibeo, even if I had to break every bone in your body. You are a jerk, the boy with the dark hair shot back. He was struggling to breathe through his injured lungs when he said, I told you that I no longer needed Konoha. Oh, stop talking, Naruto moaned before their strength and willpower finally left them. Unbeknownst to him, Kakashi and Pakun arrived just in time to capture Naruto and Sasuke, who both quickly returned to Konoha after Naruto collapsed there with Sasuke unconscious on his back and the world turned black. Flashback end. As he shakes his head at the unpleasant recollection and heads off in an unidentified direction, he thinks, and to think I really liked that heartless, shallow-minded bitch Ibeo. At least I know someone I can rely on. For the rest of his life, he would be honored and scarred by what transpired next, but at least there was a silver lining. Rewind. As our blonde friend awakens to the bright lights and gray ceiling of a hospital room, he finds his friend Shikamaru Nara, the head of the Sasuke Retrieval team, standing to his left. He remarked, "Oh, you're finally awake," as he watched Naruto shift in bed. "Hi, Shikamaru. How are the others doing?" Naruto asked as the color was back in his skin and the hole in his chest completely gone. The only way to tell he was injured would be the fact he was dressed as a mummy, covered in bandages. They did make it right? Difficult. Yes, they succeeded. Despite being in critical condition due to their injuries, Choji and Neji survived. He told the blonde, Sai. Lee was the most troublesome. Kiba and Akamaru were fine, they just need to take it easy for a few days. Why? Was Centipede Brows truly defeated by that bone freak? He inquired, growing somewhat concerned for his friend. Yes, and no, Choji would be the only one left if Hokage Sama hadn't sent for our backup. At the conclusion, Shikamaru muttered, those annoying sand siblings. Hold on. Is Gaara present? Naruto was now perplexed. He could see why a different team would be sent, but from a different village. I hope Gaara hasn't lost her bloodthirsty streak. The Rookie Nine's most slothful member simply sat there and shook his head, saying, yeah, he and his team are Well, they were helpful to us. That must mean something positive, isn't it? Too lazy to respond, Shikamaru simply nodded his head in agreement. At that moment, his room's door slides open, and 3 new guests enter, including a girl with a bouquet of flowers in a lovely arrangement of pink and yellow flowers, and 2 other people standing next to her. The girl is roughly Naruto's height, with dark blue hair, fair skin, and white eyes with a hint of lavender. Her hair is cut short and leveled cut just above her forehead, with chin length strands framing her face. She was wearing a cream-colored hooded jacket with a fire symbol on the upper right and left sleeves, fur around the cuffs and hem, navy blue pants, and blue ninja sandals. Her headband hung around her neck, a weapon pouch strapped to her right thigh, and her face was red as a tomato. The one to her right was in a wheelchair, with a white furred puppy in bandages on his lap, the hood of his gray, hooded fur lined coat down, messy brown hair, sharp black eyes with vertical slit-like pupils, and pronounced canine teeth, along with the distinctive red fang markings of the Inuzuka clan on his cheeks. A white furred puppy in bandages was on his lap, and his expression said, "Say anything about this and I'll hurt you." The one that shocked Naruto the most was the one on the right, standing upright with his arms folded across his chest. He had fair skin, short, spiky, auburn hair that was more red than brown, a red tattoo of the kanji for love on the left side of his forehead, tanuki like black eye rings around his green eyes, reddish brownish overalls with long sleeves and an upright collar, a white cloth over his right shoulder and the left side of his hips, mesh armor on his wrists and ankles, and a broad leather band system over his left shoulder and right side of his hips that allows him to carry his sand gourd. "Hey everyone, why are you here?" Naruto questioned his new guests. The red head simply crosses Naruto's bed and uses the gourd's sand to make a chair. His tone was dead. "I came to see if you recovered yet," he said. When Naruto looked directly into Gaara's eyes, he saw emotion where his voice was lacking, care and concern, something he never imagined Gaara could have. He responded, "You know Gaara, you've changed since our fight, to the now calm redhead." "I have you to thank for that," smiled Gaara. "Ah, how charming. What's that girl here for, I wonder?" In his mind, a shadowy voice inquired. He asked the creature in his mind, "What the hell? Is that you, Nine Tails? Who else is sealed inside you, you moron?" "Of course it is." The Nine Tails responded, "It appears that our argument with the Uchiha boy cleared the way for our conversation. Oh, sweet revenge. Haha." Gaara looked puzzled at his friend, who had been motionless, which was very unusual for him, and the conversation continued until it ended with a menacing laugh. "Naruto, are you alright?" Naruto turned to face Gaara after shaking his head to get his thoughts straight. "Yes." He told his fellow Jinchuriki, "I think we have another thing in common now, Gaara." Gaara simply cocked his head to the side, pondering what he might mean, and then noticed Naruto's eyes dimming once more. "Naruto, do you mean?" he asked himself, wondering if his demon was speaking to him the way Shukaku does to me. With a simple nod, Naruto said, "Yes." He gets up and says, "Well, don't worry," as the sand starts to return to his gourd. "You'll get used to it." "Well, I'll be back," he said as he began to move toward the door. "I must report with my group." "So, what exactly was that about? It seems like you two have some secret," the perplexed boy in the wheelchair inquired. Fortunately, only Shikamaru noticed that Naruto stiffens up a little at the word secret, but he feels that it is too bothersome to bring up at this time. "Oh, no, Kiba, there isn't a secret at all." He laughed nervously and said, "He, we just understand one another. Our lives growing up were about the same." It was no secret that Naruto had a difficult childhood, and if this Gaara had a similar life, it makes sense that they were close friends. The others simply nod in agreement with what he meant. Kiba told a mummified Naruto, "So Naruto, looks like you got the shit beat out of you," laughing. "You feel better than you look?" "It's not as horrible as it appears." He rubbed the back of his head with his arms and said, "I feel fine, but I think Tsunade Bakken probably thinks I'll need to stay here a while. At the latest in the morning, I should be prepared to depart from this terrifying location." That made Kiba perspire and curse in his head. "Damn, how do you heal so fast?" Kiba thought jealously and turned his head away. The blue-haired girl, who was simply looking at Naruto with a relieved smile, said, "I'm so glad Naruto-kun." "So, dog breath, what do you want?" Naruto responded to Kiba with a joke. Kiba simply replied, a tick mark appearing on his head, "Me? Nothing, you moron." "Hinata is the one who wanted to come and say, hi, to you," he said. pointing his thumb at the bashful Hyuga beside him. I simply wanted to check if you were still alive. With Kiba putting her in the spotlight, the aforementioned girl simply squeaked and began to shake more violently. One of Nara's thoughts was, given her behavior, I wonder if she's going to confess to him. Well, then, what do you want, Hinata? Naruto asked, his bewildered expression giving way to one of his foxy grins. When he addressed Hinata, she was momentarily startled and a little wide-eyed. She stammered, looking at Naruto, then the flowers, and back to Naruto, repeating this pattern for a few seconds before taking a step toward Naruto while her face continued to flush. I wanted to, she said. Here, she held out the bouquet of flowers and said, I hope you feel better, and Naruto-kun. The boy with the blonde hair simply looks at it in shock. No one has ever really cared if I got injured before, he thought. Thanks, Hinata. When he realized this was real, he practically yelled as he accepted the flowers, which made Hinata smile back and feel warm inside. Then, with a slam, the door opened, revealing a furious Kunoichi with bright pink hair, big green eyes, fair skin, and a rather large forehead. She was wearing a red keep-out dress with white circular designs, that had no short sleeves, a zipper, tight dark green shorts, and a forehead protector that she was using to draw attention to her face. She stomped over to Naruto. He could only say, Sakura.ch, before she slapped him, and when he turned to face her, his expression was one of utter shock. He then sagged slowly to the floor after she punched him in the face, knocking him off the bed and into the window next to the bed he had been in only moments before. Sakura. What are you doing, in your opinion? An enraged Shikamaru yelled, knocking over his chair as he leapt up. Kiba was frozen in shock, his mouth opening and closing so quickly that he was giving a good impression of a fish. Stop talking, everyone! With fire in her eyes and rage in her voice, Sakura turned to glare at them and said, I want to kill them. What the hell, Sakura. Chan, coughs up some blood, did I do TT Ibeo? With his left eye open and his head slightly up, Naruto asked feebly, and she returned her focus to him. What were you doing? What have you done? I asked you to bring him back, not kill him, she continued to yell at him. He's still alive, which is a miracle. Naruto coughed up some blood after she punched him in the stomach. Sakura, please quit now. Kiba and Shikamaru shouted that Kiba had just recovered from his shock. Sasuke attempted to murder Naruto. He was forced to defend himself. He simply refused to hear reason. The shadow user attempted to clarify for her. Sakura simply stood over Naruto and exuded rage. I told you to shut up. She turned her face in their direction and screamed. Please, Sakura.san, you have to comprehend. Hinata barely made it out after Naruto.kun did what he could. Hinata, you're a talker. The eyes of Naruto and Hinata grew to the size of saucer plates as Naruto said, you're only defending him because you like him. Sakura then moved to Hinata. Your feelings for him are obvious to everyone but him. He is simply so pitiful that he is blind to it. So are you? Sakura screamed and then gave Hinata a backhand across the face as she cried out in agony. As the pink banshee walked back to Naruto, who was now glaring dangerously at her to continue his beating, Hinata staggered backwards and fell to the ground, pulling her left arm back to punch him before realizing she was immobile. What? Shikamaru. When Sakura realized it was his fault, she cried out. Really, the shadow imitation technique worked. Shikamaru, in his usual kneeling position, sighed and said, Sakura, how could you do this? In addition to being our comrade, Naruto is also wounded. Unless there is a spar or an official match, Konoha shinobi do not attack one another. You don't go for the kill even in that case. I remind you that even though they are not shouting, they are loud, Kiba said, and a dog that was now barking agreed. Have you noticed what he did to kill Sasuke-kun? He's a monster, she shouted at them. I despise him. For what he did, I will never forgive him. The shadow imitation technique quickly faded, and Sakura, now able to move again, strode out of the room with a humph, before Shikamaru could blink. Hinata was beside Naruto, and she was devastated to see him. Hinata was on the floor, holding Naruto in her lap, rubbing his back in an attempt to relieve the pain, but Naruto was in ruins, his heart permanently scarred once more, and he could not possibly hope to contain his tears. Despite her own tears, Hinata remained strong for Naruto. Hush. Everything is fine, Naruto.kun, she says, comforting the distraught ninja. The scene before them moved and saddened the others, who said, don't worry, I'll never hate you. With red, shot eyes and a face marred by tears, Naruto gazed up at her and saw that she meant what she had said. To her astonishment, he clung to her, holding on for dear life as the waterworks began to run again. He cried, "Thank you, Hinata," and when she regained her composure, Hinata gave him a warm smile and a hug in return. After calming Gaara and explaining the situation to Tsunade, the fifth Hokage, everyone except Naruto and Hinata left the room. Naruto was sleeping at Tsunade's command after rehealing his old and new wounds, and Hinata would not leave his side. That was all that was said before the door reopened to reveal a furious Gaara and Hokage. Hinata muttered to herself, "Naruto-kun, I hate seeing you like this. If only I weren't so weak, I could assist you." "Is that correct? There, I might be able to assist you," a voice behind Hinata said. When Hinata turned around, she saw the fifth Hokage staring at her, and she was so startled by this that she actually jumped off the chair she was sitting on. She had a violet rhombus mark on her forehead, which she acquired some time after leaving the village, and she wore a grass-green robe with the kanji for Gamble written in black on the back inside a red circle. She wore a gray kimono-style blouse with no sleeves, held closed by a wide, dark bluish gray obi that matched her pants, and her blouse was closed quite low, exposing her sizable cleavage. She wore open-toed sandals with high heels, red polish on her fingernails, and soft pink lipstick. "Oh, Tsunade-sama. What can I do to help you, W?" the woman in the doorway was asked by Hinata. "I've heard everything I needed to hear," she said, approaching the girl. As she went to the end of the bed to retrieve the medical chart, she grinned at Hinata. She checked his vitals and chart again and said, "He'll be fine and will be released tomorrow morning." "That's fantastic." Hinata cried out. "Tsunade-sama, what's the matter?" As she noticed her leader's anxious expression, she inquired. "We ought to leave. You need to sleep as much as he does. Additionally, don't stress over Sakura." As she led the young Hyuga out of the room, she said, "Listen, if you're serious about what you said, talk to me tomorrow afternoon. I'll have a little chat with her about what she did, okay?" Tsunade sighed before taking one final look, and Hinata simply nodded her head before bowing and heading back home. As Tsunade left to rest as well, she thought, "Naruto, you will need to be in peak condition for tomorrow's council meetings." Dreamscape. When Naruto finally dozed off, he was dragged to the Nine-Tails cage, and what the others believed to be a peaceful sleep turned out to be a meeting of sorts. "You're implying that the masked man's attack on Konoha was his fault?" As he stood before the enormous steel bars of the entrance gate, Naruto posed the question. It was inside the cage, a giant red-orange furred kitsune with red eyes, a human-like upper body with opposable thumbs on its clawed hands, a fox nearly as large as the cage. It could almost compete with the Hokage residence. 9 tails swinging behind it, once as tall as the Hokage monument, if not taller, but now half as tall because the 4th Hokage had sealed its yin chakra away forever. "Yes, my young Jinchuriki, that is right. Do you see my situation now?" With a laugh, its demonic voice inquired. "Yes, but why are you suddenly being so nice? You were mean and trying to get out up until now," he said, adopting a serious and accusing stance. "If this is a ruse to gain freedom." Now he glares at the enormous red fox and points his finger. "Datbeo, I'll never let you get away and harm my friends," to his tailed beast, the Jinchuriki declared. The action of its container caused the 9 tails to perspire. "Well, Naruto, whatever you say, on to other, more recent topics." Its face lit up with a strange, eerie smile. An hour later, Naruto's face was crimson red and he was sweating profusely, while a laugh echoed through the basement-like setting. "You ought to see your face, haha. It's invaluable." As it began to regain self-control, the enormous fox uttered those words. Naruto stammered, "Shish. Shut up," out loud. The 9 tails went on to tell its vessel, "Now listen, Naruto, I am saying this because you need love in your life. With her help, some of these old wounds might be able to heal." After that, Naruto simply gazed at the flooded floor. He stated, "I couldn't lead her on like that," in a feeble and uncertain tone. The 9 tails snarled in annoyance at the boy's pessimism. "Surely you could learn to love her back," adding that you already feel something for her and that we are practically one. "It might not seem like much, but it has the potential to become much more. You just need to give it some time." "But why are you attempting to assist me in this manner?" Sigh, "My rage at that fucking Uchiha has subsided. I can see now what I did to cause you pain. Bring her here and have a conversation with her now." "However, what if I tell her about you and she ends up hating me?" As the thought of rejection caused tears to well up in his eyes, Naruto asked. "She refuses." "Just call it a tailed beast's intuition," Naruto said, casting a doubtful glance at it. As the world around him begins to fade, Naruto simply nodded. Just follow my instructions, and everything will be fine. Before Naruto's dream world turned black, the nine tails let out a roar. Dreamscape end. A certain Hyuga was seen on her way to the hospital in Konoha on a morning. She was unsure of why, but she had a terrible feeling that something terrible would happen today, and all she wanted was to see her crush before he was released so they could talk. Even if he already knows, I must tell him. But what if he doesn't feel the same way? She asked herself as she jumped from rooftop to rooftop. As a result, she paused for a minute before abruptly clearing her mind of such thoughts. She reassured herself, I'm sure he'll return them, and resumed her activities, determined to not accept no as an answer. Naruto was just waking up when a nurse informed him that he could leave in a few hours. Naruto, who had never liked hospitals, was relieved to be leaving at last. He changed, showered, and got up. Even if she does like me now, that will change when she finds out. He pondered, recalling his conversation with the nine tails last night. I wonder what she will do when I tell her the truth. A knock on the door startled him out of his reverie. Are you awake, Naruto-kun? From behind the door, a timid voice inquired. As he yelled to the door behind him, yeah, come on in Hinata. When Hinata entered, she saw him sitting on the side of the bed, staring out the window, and she couldn't help but blush when he turned to face her, the sunlight bouncing off his face giving him the aura of a guardian angel. She thinks, he's just so adorable, as a flush spreads across her face. Naruto was just staring at her. The nine tails was right, he did feel something for her, even if it was only a slight one. They both looked away as soon as they saw each other staring, with Hinata getting redder in the face and Naruto getting a slight flush. Naruto regained his composure first, patting the spot next to him on the bed, which Hinata took as an invitation to sit down and join him. At the same time, they both thought, here goes nothing. Well, Hinata? As he attempted to strike up a conversation, Naruto asked. Yeah, yes, she replied. They turned to face one another and said, there's something I need to tell you. Sakura said you like me, is that true? When he asked, Hinata swallowed before responding, why? Yes, I like you and Naruto-kun. Then he grasped her right hand. Listen Hinata, she saw the anxious expression and assumed the worst. Oh no, he dislikes me, Hinata thought, horrified and frightened. Do you recall the story we were told about the fourth Hokage's murder of the nine tails? At the last part, he heard a terrifying growl in the back of his mind and asked. He went on after she nodded, that isn't completely true. Hinata gasped as he continued to describe how the Mizuki incident taught him that he was a Jinchuriki, a person with a tailed beast sealed inside them. Her eyes widened at parts as he described his encounter with the nine tails and the occasions when he uses its power, but her response when he was done was one that cemented it for him. With tears in his eyes, he turned his head away from her and said, now you know. She removed her hand from his and said, I really am a monster, a freak. The tears began to well up and discolor his face. As soon as she recovered from her shock at what he had just told her, Hinata put her arms around him, embraced him, and began to cry as well. Naruto-kun, you are not a monster, she sobbed, shocking Naruto with her declaration, and he hugged her back. Thank you Hinata, he said, resting his head on her left shoulder and whispering sweetly into her left ear. She felt shivers down her spine from those words and his warm breath on her neck. I do have feelings for you, Hinata. This is the first time I've ever been in this circumstance. She was red and had a faint frown on her face from the separation, but he broke off their embrace. If you can understand this, I know a way that'll make it so we end up together, but there is a catch, he said. If you accept this, I promise I'll do everything in my power to keep you happy and safe, he said, staring her in the eyes. I've always loved you and will never stop doing so, Naruto-kun, Hinata said, sobbing into his chest as she tackled him. I'll do whatever I have to do to be with you, Naruto-kun, she said, looking up into his face. Hinata's heart pounded as Naruto simply flashed one of his foxy smiles, which she always found endearing. You must do exactly what I say, even though it might hurt a little. Only if this is done correctly will it work. You get it? She waited for her instructions while nodding her head. All right. Then he bent down to her neck and stopped, saying, now when I bite you, you must bite me too, and pour your chakra into it new. He receives no verbal response. Hinata then leaned into his neckline to wait for more instructions. The sensation of each other's breath on their skin chilled them from head to toe. After Naruto kissed the spot directly over her left neck pressure point and gently bit down, Hinata shivered a little before biting down on his right neck pressure point. They both then focused their chakra into their teeth to give the bite, with Hinata finishing first because she doesn't yet have any tailed beast chakra to control. She soon discovers that her body is failing her, with electrical shocks filling her entire body. If she had been standing, her knees would have undoubtedly failed her. In fact, they were doing that while she was seated, which was awkward. When Hinata's head tilted back from the intense chakra and pleasure she had received, Naruto stopped the flow of chakra. She was so disappointed that she could not help but frown as she came to. Naruto was staring at her, making her blush and putting her index fingers together. "Now, don't be afraid." She closed her eyes when she felt drawn towards something, and her eyes widened at his words. "It's time to meet the 9 tails." The world around her began to fade out. Mindscape. Looking around, she saw that the entire area resembled the basement of an industrial plant, with pipes running along the ceiling and the floor, the latter of which was flooded with water. She was frightened when she opened her eyes, or at least she would have been if her hand hadn't been entwined with Naruto, who appeared directly beside her. Suddenly, 2 enormous red eyes and a mouth full of enormous white teeth appeared inside the cage. "Well, you did not make a mistake, Naruto." The 9 tailed said in a firm voice, "Not bad." Naruto gazed at the fox with a determined expression. "So, is Hinata right now? I've heard your confession, and you don't care if I'm sealed in him, correct?" The girl in question said, nodding her head slowly. To reassure her, Naruto then tightened his hold on her hand. "Yeah. I've loved Naruto-kun forever. I'll do anything for him," she replied confidently, adding that nothing could change that. "Is that correct?" Then, with an odd twinkle in the 9 tails now glowy red eyes, "I have a deal for you. Would you accept half the burden for him?" "Yes," she shouted. "Well, that's good. Then don't worry. A part of my chakra was sealed inside you with my assistance in the Hanju conversion seal you just exchanged. It is now said that you are a pseudo Jinchuriki. Furthermore, you are both now Hanju, a half-tailed, half-human beast. However, there are other things you should be aware of." What are they?" Hinata questioned shakily after swallowing the blockage in her throat. The 9 tails began to explain. "First of all, you will never truly be apart with being marked," as Hinata began to relax at the thought. "If there ever comes a time when he'll have to mark others, you'll have to mark them as well, making them a Hanju as well. In a sense, it's an all or nothing situation with a built.in endorsement for you. However, the question still stands. Are you prepared to share him, Hinata?" "I'll do anything for Naruto-kun," Hinata said, looking down with slightly flushed cheeks and making that motion with her index fingers once more. "Even though I must share." After that, Naruto let her go and simply gave her a hug, putting his hand on her chin and raising it to look into her eyes, which were swollen with suppressed tears at the prospect of losing her one and only love. They knew that everything would be alright and that they would figure out a way to make it work if it ever came to that. "I think I can trust 2 of you with my real name and my other form," the 2 say as they end their embrace, blushing. "Now if you 2 would mind, I'm not done here yet. I have been given the name Kurama by the 6 Paths Sage, and this." The fox suddenly went up in a crimson flame, and when it subsided, a human female with 9 foxtails, fox ears, and waist length red, orange hair came out. She was wearing a red kimono that hung just above her knees, with pink flowers on the left shoulder, a cutout in the middle of her stomach that exposed her belly button and the area around it, red eyes with vertical slit like pupils, and a more defined version of Naruto's whisker marks. Her bust was anything but ordinary. Hell, those things could almost compete with Tsunade's knockers, for crying out loud. My alternate form is, "So, guys, what are your thoughts?" As she struck a few poses for the astonished and in awe of the preteens, she asked. While both Naruto and Hinata had fish impressions and blushed, their reactions were simultaneously the same and different. While Hinata was in awe of the beauty before her, Naruto did what any man without a death wish would do. He looked at Hinata and kept telling himself not to look. Dear God Almighty. Where are our shy and timid Hinata thoughts? Hinata thought admiringly, if I had looks like that, Naruto-kun wouldn't need anyone else. Naruto had similar thoughts. Could Hinata be like that? He threw them away and began to think critically. Why in God's name am I thinking such things? Wait, oh my God. That perverted sage, he affected me more than I realized, Datbeo. You're a female. As they regained their composure, they both stammered out, but the fox woman's face flushed red with rage at their response. What's the matter with that? I thought it was a good thing based on both of your reactions, she said angrily, her face looking frightening, and then she simply grinned when she saw their faces turn a deep red. Observing that Naruto's shade was significantly darker, Kurama thought, how about I give the kids a little tease for the hell of it, and decided to have some fun at the expense of her vessel. She stoops to reveal some cleavage as she says, "If you were a little nicer to me Naruto-kun, I could be yours or I could show Hinata Chan the secret to a great bust." When she does this, Naruto's face flushes atomic red, and steam emerges from his ears before he falls backwards with a burst of blood shooting from his nose. After hearing what Kurama just said, Hinata is simply stunned and numbed. "Will you tell me the trick?" With hardly more than a whisper, Hinata asked, and Kurama simply cocked her head toward her before straightening up again. "Well, Hinata is not a cause for concern. As it is, you are already mature for your age," she said in a lovely, romantic voice, adding more now would give him a heart attack when you finish your development. "Now listen, I'm going to send you two back soon, so can you hear me out, Hinata?" Hinata nodded. Yes, as she attended to the blonde boy who had fainted. "I need your assistance. With the possible exception of people who are similar to him, Naruto has endured more hardship than anyone I know. You will receive the memories. You'll see what he saw, feel what he felt, and so forth." Hinata glanced at her beloved, who was now resting on her lap and cuddling with her. "With your help, we might be able to change a few things." "Kuma-san, what is this place exactly?" "San, please don't. Honorifics never appealed to me." Hinata's eyes widened as Kurama responded, "Now to answer your question, this is his subconscious, his mind, and his soul." They discussed ways to assist Naruto in healing his injured body for the next 5 minutes, until Naruto eventually woke up. Flashback and Mindscape end. The timid, endearing voice of his traveling companion interrupted Naruto's reverie, asking, "Are you alright, Naruto-kun?" He turned to his left and saw Hinata Hyuga, his soulmate and new reason for living. He gave her a sly smile and assured her, "I'm fine, Hinata. It's just a matter of reflecting on how everything transpired." At that, a frown formed on her face, but she soon broke into her own adorable smile. "Well, at least we're together," she said, leaning into him and resting her head on his shoulder while clinging to his left arm. "I still can't believe Tosama approved of us being married so quickly," she said straight out. After the transfer of the seal and the conversation with Kurama and Naruto, she regained her courage and only engaged in specific activities. After all, having it for nearly her entire life makes it impossible to get rid of it so quickly, and Naruto mentioned that he liked her slight shyness. Yes, exactly the same here. He gets a chill from the memory, but the expressions on their faces when they first saw Kurama were priceless. "I really thought he was going to kill me." Hinata could only concur with him on that point. Tsunade arrived and escorted Naruto into a council meeting while she waited in the Hokage office following their encounter with Kurama. Rewind. The Konoha council sat in a large room with a long table, and Naruto stood in front of them with Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Iruka Amino by his side. They were arguing with the council, which was made up of 2 advisors and the village's top jonin, and things were not going well because, somehow, the third Hokage's law had been broken, and people who didn't know that he was a Jinchuriki would have been attacked if Tsunade and Jiraiya hadn't escorted him there. Even with the 2 of them, the glares and whispering continued, and a mob nearly formed, if it weren't for his companions, but something surprised him. Some people looked sad when he looked at them. Perhaps the villagers were beginning to change their minds, even if only a few of them. "You old fuck. You are crazy for doing this to him. Do you view the sacrifice of the 4th in this way?" Shizune was attempting to calm her mentor, but even she wasn't pleased with what was happening. Tsunade screamed, her patience rapidly ebbing away and her rage growing every second. A woman of average height and slender build, Shizune had brown hair and black eyes. She wore a long bluish black kimono with white trimmings, held closed by a white obi, and open-toed sandals with low heels. Her hair was straight and shoulder length, with bangs that framed her face and covered her ears. "He is erratic. You witnessed the state of Sasuke Uchiha. He clearly has no control over the 9 tails. He needs to be arrested and monitored constantly." As a member of the Konoha Council, Homura Mitokado, a wrinkled old man with gray hair, a beard, glasses, and a constant frown that he has maintained even in his old age, wears similar garb to that of Hiruzen Sarutobi, the 3rd Hokage, when acting in his capacity as Hokage, which consists of a simple long kimono, closed by an obi, a jacket, and a sash over it. The room was lit, but it was only dimly, so Naruto could not really see what they were all wearing, and the only light was dim unless he had it. It was essential. Sasuke thrust the Chidori into his chest while wielding an enhanced version of it. For God's sake, he was using Orochimaru's curse seal. Iruka screamed to make his point and made the accusation. Silence. Another old prune and former 3rd Hokage teammate, Kaharu Utatane, yelled authoritatively. As a member of the Konoha Council, she, like Homura, wore a simple long kimono, closed by an obi, a jacket, and a sash over it. In addition, Kaharu has taken to squinting, hardly opening her eyes at any point in time. Her hair was pulled back in a twin bun, locked by a traditional Japanese hairpin with 2 pearls dangling off the side. Her earrings are also significantly longer, and the pearls on her hair needle have grown since her youth, and tassels were added to the other end. Iruka Amino, you are going too far. Avoid pushing it. For Konoha's and its citizens' safety, this is the best course of action. Jiraiya gave that statement a sigh. He muttered, you're more like covering up with your hate of the 9. Tails breaking free, loud enough for everyone to hear. The legendary Sannin of Konoha, Jiraiya, was a tall man with 2 shoulder-length bangs framing both sides of his face, waist-length, spiky white hair that was usually tied back into a ponytail, and red lines running down from his eyes. He wore a horned forehead protector with the kanji for oil, indicating his affiliation with Mount Myoboku, and wore mesh armor underneath his green short shirt kimono, which was adorned with a scroll on his back, handguards, a simple black belt, traditional Japanese geta, wooden sandals, a red cloak with 2 simple yellow circles, and a scroll on his left palm, which is similar to the one that Gamma has in his own. Jiraiya, are you saying that they are unjust? Danzo Shimura asked, looking directly at Jiraiya with his left brown eye. He was a thin, elderly man who uses a cane to walk. He was formerly a close friend of the 3rd and a contender for the 3rd Hokage seat. He had black, shaggy hair and a bandaged right eye. Danzo had an X-shaped scar on his chin since he was a young man. He wore a white shirt with a brown robe over it that covered his right arm, which was bandaged, from his feet to just over his right shoulder. Naruto knew this village elder was evil from the first moment he saw him. When he looked at him, he felt as though he lived for the suffering of others, and when he realized Naruto was observing him, he glared at the boy. Naruto did not tolerate the other 2, so he was not going to make an exception for him. Danzo said, I would advise you to watch who you're glaring at, boy, wearing a frustrated and angry expression. You ungrateful bastard, you act as if I care, Naruto retorted in a tone that was nearly identical. Naruto. Shizune, who was watching the 2 verbally abuse one another, gasped along with Iruka, who was just as shocked as everyone else. You see, he is unable to regulate his feelings. In a slightly, I told you so, tone, Danzo said, he's a danger to everyone in this village because of this, which is why he can't control the 9. Tails power. We need to take action on this. Just as Tsunade opened her mouth to speak, she was interrupted. Tsunade. Our choice is final. Naruto Uzumaki, you are now stripped of your rank and statues, and you are hereby exiled from Konohagakure no Sato until further notice, declared Kaharu authoritatively. Any normal person would just shatter like glass at this point, and if he hadn't already, he might have done so, but someone beat him to it. Naruto didn't know what to think, let alone what to feel, because everything he did was for this village. When Tsunade arrived to pick Naruto up, she told him to wait in her office because everything he had just learned and gone through was crushing her. Kurama was trying her hardest to keep the flow from there now. Active seal links steady. Tsunade's office was occupied by a now destroyed Hinata Hyuga. The fox half-heartedly pondered, why'd I feel like this isn't over yet, as she concentrated too much on the connection between her 2 hosts. When Shizune left to assist the hospital staff, Naruto was with Tsunade on their way to her office to meet with Hinata. He now has a week to pack up and depart, but how was he going to tell her that he had just found someone to love and care for? They came to a sudden halt as Hiyashi Hyuga, the leader of the Hyuga clan, appeared in front of them. Hyuga-san, what can we do for you? As they continued to walk, Tsunade inquired. I want to let you know that this was opposed by every clan. We all didn't want this to occur. Even without our votes, they would have discovered something we did. So in the end, we did the only thing we could think of at the time, he said in his characteristically deadpan tone, but those 2 were calling for execution. I understand. As Tsunade could no longer contain her rage, she said, it's good to know that not all of you are as stupid as those 2 shriveling old crones and that warhawk. Care to join us, Hyuga-san? We're headed to your oldest daughter's office to meet her. The news that his timid, shy daughter was eager to meet the Hokage was unexpected, and Hiyashi was taken aback. Could you tell me what you need from her? Raising an eyebrow at the curvaceous blonde, he asked. If you'd like, come. But I have tasks to complete. Tsunade calmly said, so don't bother me with your pointless questions. Well, there goes her self-control. Anger simply envelops her as brightness envelops the sun. Iruka left because he had things to do at the academy and was too sad and shocked by what had just happened, and Jiraiya left the two of them with the curtsy of a chakra. Enhanced punch from Tsunade for a perverted mark she simply did not need at the moment. Now, with Hiashi, they head to Tsunade's office to meet Hinata and for Tsunade to get her cup of sake. Hinata was leaning against the left wall when they entered the room. The office itself was not very large, and behind the square desk, buried in paperwork, was a wall of windows overlooking the village. When she saw the door open, Hinata quickly got up and ran to Naruto, where they embraced. Her eyes widened when she saw her father among them, and she was also struck by the look he gave her as he walked past her to stand in front of the desk that Tsunade was now sitting behind in her chair. Hinata was practically glowing red with delight as Naruto lifted her a few centimeters off her feet and planted a quick kiss on her lips. Naruto was grinning like a fox. The only word I can think of to describe Hiashi's reaction is flabbergasted. He was staring straight at the blonde-haired boy holding his oldest daughter, and Tsunade was momentarily stunned and staring, but not at the two genin, even though that still shocked her, because she had only learned about her feelings yesterday. Indeed, Hiashi was shocked, but more than that, he was furious. Mind you, he had no ill will toward the boy, but he was the girl's father, and they were acting in such a manner in front of him. Even if she failed to succeed as the Hyuga clan's next leader, she was still his daughter, and he was only harsh with her to help her become stronger, but in reality, he only succeeded in the opposite way. She even lost a simulated battle to her sister, Hanabi, who was 5 years younger than her, ensuring that she would not succeed her as the clan's next leader. The sounds of someone clearing their throat caused the two to break the embrace and stand at attention, or at least they tried to. Naruto's head was up with one of those smiles and his hands behind his head, while Hinata was red in the face and fiddling with her index fingers. He opened his blue eyes to see how the adults in the room looked, and when he saw Hiashi, he was about to throw up and flee the Hokage tower. He laughed sheepishly and scratched the back of his head, but he couldn't help but be awestruck by Hinata's beauty as she played with her hands in her typical bashful pose. I can't stop staring at her. Why would I stop? He asked himself. She becomes even more anxious upon noticing his gaze. Damn. She looks so adorable when she does that. They were all listening when there was another clearing of the throat. Now that I got your attention, she said, gesturing to the seats with her arms. Would you mind giving me an explanation for your behavior, as I seem to have missed something? Pointing to the two lovers on the couch to the right, she posed the question. Hiashi regained control and said, yes, I would like to know that as well, from the chair across from them. The seal link was now fully operational, allowing them to communicate through thoughts, so the two looked at each other and were unsure of what to say. After a few seconds of deliberation, they finally understood. Love, that's all they said. The remark caused the two adults to perspire. And Hiashi was considering whether he could kill the boy and avoid the Hokage's wrath when Tsunade asked, gesturing further. Both young sets of eyes widened for a moment at the words, Naruto, Hinata. The adults did not miss this. Yes, Kurama, Naruto said. What is it? Pay attention. I believe I now know how to get you two out of this situation. Tell them not to panic, but that you will let them know. I will require your assistance. When they consent, release your chakra. Why? Hinata inquired. The tailed beast clarified, it's as easy as pulling them into Naruto's subconscious. Based on their knowledge, the two approved of the plan. The next step is to bring in the strict father and protective mother figure who can conceal feelings during such shocks. Do you swear not to overreact or anything if we tell you to? Naruto inquired. Fine, said Hiashi and Tsunade. After saying, okay then, Naruto and Hinata began to channel their chakra until a red aura flared around them. Both of them. The others were engulfed in the same red chakra and felt as though they were being drawn away somewhere before they could react. Mindscape, Naruto remarked, were here, as they arranged themselves. What they saw was a huge gate in the middle of an industrial plant's basement, with Naruto and Hinata holding hands in front of them. Where are we? Tsunade screamed while Hiashi activated his Byakugan. The veins by his eyes bulged out to be seen by everyone. After a quick survey of the area, he deactivates them and muttered, clever. What is the intended meaning of that? A bewildered Tsunade questioned the Hyuga clan chief. A voice in front of them said, you both are inside Naruto's mindscape, and when they turned to face the children, they were uneasy and confused. Behind the two of them, now inside the gate, was the nine-tailed demon fox, or what they believed to be the most powerful of the nine-tailed creatures that had almost destroyed their village. She was also in her human form, with only her ears and tails revealing who she was. Hey, are you both curious as to why Naruto and Hinata are acting in this manner? As she kneels and wraps an arm around each of them, she asks, stating the obvious. She went on after receiving 2 shocked parental heads nodding. Well, then, that's easy to answer, she said. They're both married. She smiles and laughs at the couple she's speaking to. WH. What have you said? Tsunade inquired as Hiyashi made a demand. Well, it's really that easy. They're married, at least in terms of Hanju and Tailed Beast. To the astonished adults, Kurama clarified, marking your life partner is just like a wedding ceremony for you humans. Hinata was staring at Naruto with suspicion, feeling that her dream had come true sooner than she had anticipated. She wanted to marry Naruto, of course, but this was too soon. She asked innocently, gazing at the two in her arms, what, have I not told you? As they shook their heads, no, she maintained a phony, oops, expression. Well, let's get back to the reason you two are here. I have plans for these two, and it's time to tell you the truth. She then explained the meanings of the Hanju conversion seal, Hinata's requirements for the seal, and mating, but she deftly omitted the ones to share Naruto with other women. Hey, there's no reason to kill the new son.in.law, right? Moreover, what really shocked them was the agreement with Hinata and Naruto to kill this masked man, when they are strong enough. Finally, she talked about their happiness and the new seal she made that had the same properties as the 4th Hokage's 4-symbol seal, just split. So, do you need to tell us anything else? Tsunade asked, taking in everything she had just learned. No, that pretty much sums it up, Naruto replied. Well, I have a question, Hiyashi said, drawing everyone's attention. 9. Tails, why do you talk about them like they're your own children? Wanting to know the same thing, Tsunade nodded. Naruto says, I have been wondering that myself, but never put much thought into it, raising his head back to meet the red eyes of the vixen. Why is that 9? Tails. Why? Tsunade just met you, but she may be a grandmother or something. Before giving her blonde host an unexpected bear. Well, Fox, hug, she explained, I've known you your entire life, and you need all the love one can give. I must make up for the hatred I have brought into your life. Furthermore, even though it isn't true, I feel for you too as if you were my own. All right. I get it. Let go, please. She quickly released him and apologized sheepishly as Naruto began to turn blue in the face and mumbled, I can't breathe. Can we leave now that everything has been resolved? After seeing what she needed to see, Tsunade inquired. Hiyashi and Tsunade felt they didn't even want to know what was said to them, given who said it, but then they knew, and they experienced the dragging sensation once more before being drawn from Naruto's subconscious. The trio nodded before Kurama said something to the pair that made them blush. Mindscape's end. Tsunade sagged in her chair, exhausted. What a day, she murmured to herself in a low voice. Hiyashi continued to look at Naruto critically, but that was to be expected. He would move on regardless. So, what did you need from me, Hokage? Sama? To everyone's surprise, Hinata asked. They all thought in near unison, and she didn't shudder. Naruto thought, damn, she's so much cuter when she shudders. Just not when it's a lot. Hashi, is there anything you need from me before I respond to that? The 5th questioned the head of the Hyuga. The same as what my daughter asked you, it was his response. Hiyashi raises an eyebrow at what is about to happen, and Hinata widens her eyes. Sigh. Fine. Hinata, before all this, I was planning on asking you if you would consider being my apprentice, but, because of what just transpired, I can't let that happen. When Hinata became depressed and hung her head low, he felt compelled to make a scene because he saw his beloved in such sadness. Hey, why is that Bakken acting that way? If he wasn't already furious, it's his turn now. This has to do with me, not Hinata too, TT Ibeo, he yelled. Naruto's attempt to defend Hinata caused her face to flush. Tsunade waited for Hiyashi's response, but Hiyashi simply brushes it off, realizing that there is nothing he can do and that he understands what Tsunade is implying quite well. To begin with, don't call me that. Second, Naruto, since she would have to remain here, I am unable to accept her as an apprentice. Additionally, Tsunade informed him that all her ties with Konoha except her Byakugan will be erased like yours if she is to be with you, so she must leave with you. He is at a loss for words, wanting to be with her but not at the expense of her happiness, and then comes to a decision. He confidently said, then Hinata stays here, which took everyone by surprise. He then turned to face her. Hinata, remain here. Staying here will make you much stronger and happier. This is the last thing I have left. When I go, I can only give you how I feel. I'm unsure of where to go. On the other hand, aside from the fact that you don't have family here, what will happen? He pointed a thumb at her father, who narrowed his eyes slightly, and grinned, saying, hell, even if they don't show that much emotion. Hiyashi moaned to himself, This boy keeps making this much harder than it needs to be. N. Naruto.kun. All of that doesn't bother me. As long as I'm with you, I don't care, she said, firmly grabbing his arm. She pleaded with him, looking into his blue eyes. Please, Naruto.kun. Permit me to accompany you. She began to cry a little, and Naruto was so hurt by this that he nearly lost his temper. How about your training, though? Naruto began to say. You could be so, but Tsunade cut him off. Even though this is heartbreaking, I never claimed that I couldn't teach her. She couldn't be my apprentice, I simply stated. Tsunade said, I can give her scrolls and books she'll need to memorize to be a medical nin, as everyone snapped their heads so quickly in her direction that they should have broken. In addition, you have roughly a week before your departure date. Given my strengths and medical knowledge, I can offer her guidance and recommendations. She smiled at this point. Hiyashi began to move toward the door and stopped as he partially opened it. Well, if everything is settled, then I have one thing to do, he said. You are aware that if you follow through with this, you most likely won't see Hanabi or me again? He asked, giving her a fixed look. After giving it some thought, Hinata nodded pitifully, yes Tosama. All right, then stop by in a little while to pick up your belongings and bid farewell. Naruto Uzumaki, if you hurt my daughter, even if you have the 9 tails inside you, I'll hunt you down and I'll kill you. He left the room and began slowly closing the door to give effect to his gaze on Naruto. I'll have a few scrolls for you. If you weren't used to it as much as he was, the level of killer intent was oppressive, and all that was left was anger. That was unexpected and out of the ordinary, wasn't it? The recuperating blonde knucklehead Genin inquired. As they departed, it finally dawned on Naruto that he would never become the Hokage. After everything he had done for the village, they were punishing him once more for something that was out of his control. Everyone who remained in the room simply nodded. They swiftly reviewed the banishment and Tsunade ordered both of them to return their forehead protectors, even though she didn't want to. After that, everything returned to normal, at least for Naruto. He was beaten by the villagers a few times, but he ignored the pain. As word spread that he was the Jinchuriki of the 9 tails, things got worse and better. His friends showed him more respect. They didn't care that he was a demon jailer, unlike many shinobi, but some old fucks are better off without them. Sasuke and Sakura treated him the same as the villagers, even going so far as to treat him like the plague. The week passed, and it was time for them to leave. Hinata had some advanced gentle fist art scrolls and other moves from her clan, and, after Neji was discharged from the hospital, she was able to train with him for a short time. Tsunade was able to advise her on which books to memorize first and which healing techniques to learn first. Naruto received a few scrolls from Jiraiya, but not many. They both said goodbye to their friends and family, which for Naruto meant everyone who was important to him. After saying their goodbyes, they left the village without turning around. This greatly infuriated Gamabunta, who assured Naruto, no, he swore, that the Toad clan would always be by his side and that if he ever discovered another summons, it was okay for them to become their summoners. He only needed to inform them. It seems that people confuse summons. You can have more than one, but you need permission from your currents for it. You also need to think of the animal you want to summon during the technique. Otherwise, it would either not work or you would end up with one from your original contract. Flashback end. Returning to the present, Naruto and Hinata set off in an arbitrary direction and pause a few miles from Konoha, where they were standing in front of the bridge that Naruto and Team 7 assist in constructing and protecting, as well as the shore and border of the Fire Country and the Wave Country. The Great Naruto Bridge was written on the bridge's plaque. His mind was racing with so many questions, but that's for another time, my friends. Tsunade asked herself repeatedly, how many years have it been? How many hangovers from the sake I drank to ease my pain? And then she lost track. The first year was long, lasting. His spy network allowed Jiraiya to track them down and assist with their training, while Hinata's covert apprenticeship was to herself, Konoha's slug princess, Tsunade, and Naruto's apprenticeship was to the Toad Sage. All she can do is hope they're secure. What a fool, you brat, Naruto, telling us to leave you two alone and you both disappear, exclaimed Tsunade, exasperated. She then snatches up a bottle of sake and gulps it down. You see, Naruto and Hinata have been out of sight for nearly 3 years now, and not even Jiraiya's spies have been able to locate them. For the first two, Jiraiya was able to train them for 3 to 4 months out of the year. The Konoha Council, of course, was unaware of this and would have immediately prohibited it if they had, believing him to be gathering information from his spy network. She recalls that day second only to the day she was unable to prevent his exile or banishment, even though they would still be training them. You see, she was able to send a shadow clone to monitor Hinata's progress with the aid of storage sealing. Because when a shadow clone is destroyed, All of the knowledge it has acquired is transferred to the original. She puts down the empty sake bottle and lets her mind relive the last time she saw them. Rewind. Interestingly, we find ourselves in the field outside of Tsunade town, the same clearing where the three Sannin, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru, battled against Kabuto Yakushi with their revered summons, Gamabunta, Katsuyu, and Manda, and where Naruto used a mastered Rasengan and almost died when Kabuto struck him in the chest. The ground appears to have been the scene of a recent ragging battle, with dents in the boulders and dust and other debris from the last explosion, which could only have been an overpowered technique, covering the once green field. As the field begins to clear, 4 figures appear, 2 of whom are leaning on their knees and, incidentally, are breathing heavily. Their clothing is clearly visible, and their field of vision is clear. A young man with blonde, spiky hair and whisker, like cheek markings, is the one on the far right. He is dressed in a form-fitting orange tracksuit with black down the front and sleeves, around the neck and shoulders, and on the left side, a red swirl on the back, orange pants, and black sandals. The person on the left, who is unquestionably a man, was clearly a woman due to her large bust, feminine face, and long dark blue hair, which fell to her waist in a straight style haircut and had chin-length strands framing her face. She also shared cheek markings with the man next to her, and she was dressed in a loose-fitting, long-sleeved, lavender and cream zip-up jacket with lavender cuffs over mesh armor, navy blue pants, and black, low-heeled sandals. Both of them were dressed in what could be considered ninja due to the weapon holders and pouches on their thighs and their shinobi attire. Jiraiya and Tsunade are standing in front of them. Their clothes are a little tattered and covered in a layer of dust and dirt, but their attire hasn't really changed in comparison to the teens who are gasping for air. "Good work, Hinata," Tsunade said, complimenting the young lady. "You've nearly perfected it. You will undoubtedly become a very lethal kunoichi one day if you combine that with your gentle fist art." She grinned at the girl she had been covertly training, saying, "Not that you aren't already one, even without using the 9 tails chakra." The young man was told, "Well done, brat," by Jiraiya. He nodded his head and placed his hand under his chin. "Now you got 3 tails mastered alongside Hinata, sealing skills equivalent to mine, mastered your original techniques, the wind release, Rasengan and wind release, Rasen Shuriken, and an almost true master of wind release," he said. After exchanging glances and grinning like foxes, the two returned their focus to their 2 senseis. Naruto, Hinata. Even though she is a shadow clone, the Tsunade clone has the original's emotions, so she said sadly, "It's time we go." The original is saddened by this, and she says, "We'll see you next year." Holding himself upright, Naruto says firmly, "Bakken, perverted sage." "No, this is actually goodbye." They both felt a tug on their hearts as they noticed the nicknames he wouldn't give up, creating tick marks on their foreheads. "What?" In unison, the 2 masters scream at their apprentices. He went on, "We have to part ways, with Hinata at his side by now. We've met a few folks in." After that, he looks to Hinata for support, and he gets it as she speaks in his place. She then turned to face her husband to check on him, "And we can't put you in any more danger if the council found out," she said. Although they had been married by Hanju standards ever since they left the village, they finally had a marriage ceremony, albeit a small one, because, for some reason, it didn't feel the same without one. "Well, then, we'll seal what is left to teach you in a scroll," Tsunade said, letting out a defeated sigh. "One of the toads will definitely bring it to you." "Agreed," Naruto said, nodding his head in comprehension. "I appreciate everything you guys have done." Hinata made a small formal bow in gratitude. "Yes, thank you, Tsunade. Sama, Jiraiya. Sama," she said. "Yes, indeed. Enough with the formalities," Jiraiya said, dismissing the bow with a shake of his hand. "It's okay if this is what you two desire, however, it will become monotonous without your attention," he concluded, then turned and left. He runs away, waving behind his back, and Tsunade's shadow clone waves to the 2 before dispelling itself. Jiraiya and Tsunade were unaware that 6 figures joined the 2 exiled genin as they were leaving the clearing. And as soon as the Sannin vanished into the distance, Naruto, Hinata, and the newcomers used the body flicker technique and vanished to an unidentified location. Flashback end. As she puts the half-empty sake bottle away, she remarked, "Sigh, but that was a year and a half ago. Who knows how far they've advanced?" At that moment, Jiraiya, her former teammate, entered through the door and said, "Tsunade, I have good news," with a serious expression on his face. Somewhere else. The first Uzukage, Naruto Uzumaki, sneezes unexpectedly in the recently rebuilt Uzushiogakure no Sato, located in the reformed Whirlpool country, miles away. He rubs his nose and looks out the window at his new home, which also happens to be the birthplace of his mother, Kushina Uzumaki, and his ancestor of the Uzumaki clan. After they began rebuilding Uzushio, Kurama told him and Hinata about her, telling them her name, her personality, and how she had been her previous host before him until the masked man took control of her, tore her away from her, and was later sealed into Naruto by the fourth Hokage, who he later discovered was actually his father. She also told him about the tailed beasts in general, and in particular that the Six Paths Sage had given them names. Bakken or perverted sage must be talking about me, the blonde Kage laughed. Are things okay, Uzukage? Sama, his assistant, secretary inquired. When he turned around again, his eyes opened to reveal cerulean blue eyes. Everything is fine, just remembering something on a past that can't be revived, he replied. And I believed I had asked you to be less formal. Call me Naruto, please. She looks down with a smile on her face as he says, I detest formalities, taking the paperwork off his desk. But Uzukage. Sama, you deserve formalities, she sweetly said to her superior. You are the last blood member and head of our great Uzumaki, now turned Namikaze Uzumaki clan. His expression changed to one of seriousness as he stopped her in her tracks and said, Now hold your horses. I believed I had informed the council and you that I would not include that name in the clan. Only the Uzumaki clan is present. Instead of Namikaze, Tochin called me Uzumaki. I'm going to continue Kachan's clan because he asked me to. Namikaze isn't a clan name, anyway. You do realize it's just a surname? I get it. It is still your name, though. In any case, Naruto. Sama, you are the Kage. She looks at him, her black eyes meeting his blue ones. We don't want to show any disrespect, darling, she said, leaning sensuously on the desk and displaying her assents. As she finished, her eyes were serious and full of lust. He said, Of course you don't, Yugito, while kissing her across his desk. You had better leave now. She gave him a cute little pout after he explained, I have a meeting to get to very soon. No quickie. As she gives him what she refers to as kitty cat eyes, the feline equivalent of puppy dog eyes, she asks. No. This time, no, he said calmly, glancing up and down at her while mentally cursing the Rakage and Mizukage for this encounter. He said in a tender tone, As much as I would love to, and you know me, I do babe, I can't now, and then he embraced her and they shared a passionate kiss. All right, she said, gasping for breath, but like our other loves, I'll christen this office. I'll also let the others know about this minor incident. With a sly smile, she leaned his head up next to his ear and said, And the five of us are going to have a long talk when you get back from this meeting. She saw the slight widening of his eyes. After making little circles with her finger on his chest and nibbling him on his earlobe, she got a soft moan from her beloved. Naruto simply smirked and shook his head, and she snickered at the idea of all the fun she and her three female mates would have with Naruto. As she went to the locations where the others worked, she thought, Thank God for silencing seals. As he leaves, Naruto also feels conflicted about Yugito Ni's earlier statement. He worries that he won't be able to work in the morning for the early hours, but he also thinks that he could relax tonight and relieve some tension, regardless of how poorly this meeting goes. The final part, which we can all guess what it is him jumping up and down and getting a nosebleed from the implications and thought. In an attempt to conceal his inner turmoil, he put on a neutral, emotionless face and proceeded to the meeting. He got to me more than I thought, he thought, relishing the thought of the talk that awaited him with his 4 wives. Damn that perverted toad bastard. A return to Konoha. A terrible discussion was coming to an end. It is very likely that what the case, he said, but that's not all. Her perverted teammate has handed her a scroll, which Tsunade is examining. Is this true? She put it down and asked. Yes, my spies in sound assure it, he said, his expression grim. It doesn't make sense, though. The Akatsuki leader would be hiding in aim, but why? Otto, Kusa, and Yuki would be understandable, she said, looking at him after shaking her head. However, a civil war is supposed to be raging in aim. What on earth took place? His eyes narrowed as he replied, All I can find is someone killed the village leader, Hanzo of the Salamander, and this missing Nin took over. How is that possible? He was too strong even for us, the Sannin of Konoha, as he called us. Is the Akatsuki leader truly this powerful? Tsunade folded her hands under her chin and asked. Maybe. But that's not all, he added, but I can't get any confident answers. There are a lot of tensions between the 5 great shinobi countries, she said, squinting at him. They have dispatched an ambassador to Kiri and Kumo. We'll be in more trouble if neither Kumogakure nor Kirigakure have Sato to join them. Things are not looking good for Konoha. If only Naruto were still with us, Tsunade sighed at this news. They are closely related to one another. He concluded his report by saying, if one of them joins, the other might as well. Fantastic. Only Kusa appears to be out of it now, Tsunade remarked cynically. Jiraiya said, barely avoiding a chakra. Enhanced blow, true, but I think they might join if Kumo backs down the offer. Well, I'll meet you at the bar in 2 days about the other business. One of my contacts recently provided me with an update. See you. He heard her murmur, I hate this job, and fled through the window before she could hit him again. Where's my sake now? Somewhere in Rice Country, Otto. There are 4 men standing around a table with a map in the middle of a dark room, and an irate shout reverberates through the room and the corridors around it. The man on the right remarked, this is awful. I could retaliate and destroy Konoha. The third Tsuchikage, Onoki, also known as Onoki of both scales, is the leader of Iwagakure no Sato. He is dressed in brown and white cage robes with the earth kanji on them. You're correct. The man across from the Tsuchikage said, he, your blood must be boiling, Onoki. With our combined forces, Konoha won't fall. Shimero, stop talking. Onoki gave the man a growl. My friend, I concur with you. To Onoki's right, a tall man, about 6'9", with equal parts strength and intelligence, said, our forces won't be enough to crush Konoha. An auto forehead projector is the only distinguishing feature. I took control of my village with 1/4 of their total size. Without Orochimaru, Sama, Sasuke Uchiha, and your Jinchuriki, we will surely lose. The man gave the man a scowl. Despite being Otogakure no Sato's new leader following Orochimaru's passing, he found the man boring for some reason. The last man in the room said, yes. But what about Suna, Taki, or Aim? Only a Kusa forehead projector identifies this man, who was of average height, 5 feet 6 inches, and very fit. That's not lucky, Onoki. Taki and Suna oppose our cause and are Konoha's allies. The Auto leader shook his head in response, saying, and Aim won't let any outsiders into their country because of their new leader. Onoki resisted being influenced. He insulted them by saying, you Auto guys are weak to be afraid of them. You're a fool. The cage belongs to the group you want us to attack, he shouted as he stood up. Slow down. The one-tailed Shukaku is no longer in the brat's possession, Onoki assured the man. It is accurate to say that he no longer harbors the tailed beast. But now that it's gone, he can manipulate his sand more than he could previously. There's a reason why they called this Gara child cage. The Tsuchikage condescendingly said, then you and your men are a pathetic lot, to the man beside him. Did you say what? He responded with a shout. Oh, forget it, the leader of AIM, Hanzo of the Salamander, was going to employ traditional guerrilla warfare, attack, and retreat tactics on them, Shimero muttered as he slammed his hands on the table. All of this is intended to make them less inclined to go aid Konoha. But it's pointless to start a war now that he's gone and his nation is embroiled in a civil war. The hopeful voice of this war master planner silenced Onoki's mumbling curse as he slumped back into a sitting position. Now the ambassador I have been sent to Kiri and Kumo, he said. Because of their close ties, it is likely that the other Mizukage or Reikage will accept our offer as well. Perhaps their most recent ally of a brand new, unidentified, and formidable hidden shinobi village will also join in. The Auto leader described the possibility of an attack using the map on the table, saying, if that turns out to be the case, we can encircle them from all sides. And we can destroy Konoha and its allies regardless of how much assistance they receive. Then, the door flew open, and an Auto.nin knelt down in front of his leader and said, Shimero. Sama, the ambassador I sent to Kiri has failed. Kiri also declines to support our cause. He sighed as he looked at Onoki and addressed the group, saying, it appears that there is no hope left. Even though I am a cage-level shinobi, my strength is nowhere close to yours. We could defeat Konoha and its allies even if we were equal to 2 cage-level shinobi. This war will never occur because it would be suicide until we hear from Hanzo, AIM's new leader, or find out who Kiri and Kumo's new ally is. This meeting has been adjourned for the time being. Time skip. Konoha, 2 days later. Tsunade addressed the group of ninja in front of her, saying, so that is the synapse of your mission. Each member of this team, Kurinai, Mighty Guy, Rock Lee, Kiba and Akamaru, Shino, and Tenten, has developed and grown since Naruto and Hinata were exiled from Konoha. Guy and Lee wore the typical Konoha flak jacket, a green jumpsuit, and orange striped leg warmers. They wore forehead protectors on a red cloth around their waist, like a belt. Kurinai's usual attire consists of a red mesh armor blouse with only the right sleeve exposed, covered in a very broad material that resembles bandages with a pattern resembling rose thorns. She also wears the Konoha forehead protector and standard shinobi sandals. Kurinai's makeup consisted of purple eyeshadow and red lipstick. Over the course of 3 years, Kiba's appearance changed. Now, everything he wore, including his forehead protector, was black, and his coat was replaced by what appears to be a modern leather form. Fitting black jacket with sleeves and a chest zip, black pants, and sandals that matched the jacket. Akamaru has literally grown to the size of a bull. He is no longer the little puppy that would sit on Kiba's head. Instead, Kiba now sits on Akamaru's back. With a hood that further obscures his face, a satchel on his back, and a jacket that hung down to his knees, Shino's appearance became even more enigmatic, making it more difficult for people to immediately recognize him. Tenten's attire changes in a number of ways. She wears a long, sleeved white blouse with a high collar, red fastener, and hakama. Like puffy pants, with bandages covering the exposed areas of her legs near the waist. She removes the shuriken holster and the bandage on her right leg. She dons brown fingerless gloves. Her forehead protector has changed to the same color, and her shinobi sandals have been replaced with black, open-toed sandals with low heels, which reach her lower ankles. All of this is still a nod to Chinese culture. So, we will discover whether Kumo and Kiri will fight alongside Otto and Iwa, Tenten inquired. Yes, Tsunade nods, then turns to face the mighty Guy and says, Guy, you're going to Kumo with Lee and Tenten. Kurinai, Shino, and Kiba will go to Kiri, she added, turning to face Kurinai. Would you mind telling me why the teams were split up, Hokage? Sama? Shino inquired as to which member of Team Kurinai was the most perceptive. As everyone is aware, Kiri has been embroiled in a civil war for many years. It ought to be, at least. Their familiarity with the other lands is minimal at best. As a result, they probably won't suspect you like Kumo did. However, that does not preclude you from dressing in disguise. However, since power and speed are needed, Kumo might learn about us in the team, Tenten concluded, completing the thought. That is correct. Tracking and infiltration are Team Kurinai's areas of expertise. Include the additional time gained by positioning genjutsu over the terrain or enemy. Shino's bugs can drain the chakra of their victims. Tsunade continued. Kiba's enhanced senses and they can perform excellent escape plans. I understand. Let us go to success with the help of our youth. Guy pumped his arm into the air and yelled, his eyes burning. Guy. Sensei, yes. We will succeed with the help of our youth, and I'll run 500 laps around the village if we fail, shouted Lee. When the mission briefing is over, the two teams leave, but not before Tsunade interrupts their youth nonsense. Almost 2 hours after the briefing, Team Kurinai left the village, just in time to pack for what would undoubtedly be a lengthy journey. They will need to wait at least 2 days to reach the border in order to take their boat to the Land of Waves, which will take 2 days to reach the village and another day for the boat to reach the island. However, don't be fooled by the fact that Kiba had to say goodbye to his girlfriend, a civilian in Konoha. Rumor has it that she can become violent when enraged, and judging by the bruises on Kiba's face, it is safe to assume that these rumors are accurate. How are we doing this, Kurinai? Sensei. Kiba, perched atop his loyal friend Akamaru, asks as he rubs his bruised cheek. I believe I mentioned that we are now on an equal footing. Ignoring his question, she said, there's no need to call me sensei. She smirked as she turned to face him. Well, looks as if someone will be sleeping on the couch when we get back, she said. Yeah, well, it seems he said and forgot something important when he went home and packed, Shino said, pushing up his sunglasses to speak for his teammate. At least that's what I thought when I met him and nearly got struck in the head by a pot. His most trusted companion gives him a couple of barks and what can be assumed is a dog's way of snickering, but Kiba just glares at the bugman and crosses his arms over his chest with a gruff. Apparently, it was not to support him. Stop talking. He angrily accused his partner, you always support her. In any case, whose side are you on? Bark. Akamaru answered. Figures, Kiba whispered to himself. The argument between a man and his dog caused Shino and Kurinai to perspire. Shino pulled Kiba from his argument with his dog by saying, anyway, back to the main subject. To us, you'll always be our sensei, Shino said. Kurinai let out a defeated sigh and made the decision to discuss their plan to enter Kiri. To get to Water Country, we must first cross the border and locate a ferry. As if it were common sense, she responded, but before we get on the ship we disguise ourselves. Then we'll see if we can get any information from frequent passengers. The remaining distance to the village will then be covered on foot. Once inside, I'll find a place to stay at while you two do a little recon, she told them. Shino asked, so, this will be a long mission in a way, and then asked, what about Team Guy? Kiba and Shino nodded their heads in agreement. From the aspects of the mission, it'll take them just as long to get to Kumo, as it'll take us to get to Kiri, they said. After deciding on a plan, the remaining members of Team 8 continue their assignment, believing that an easy journey is ahead of them even though they have no idea what they're actually up to. Inside the office of the Uzukage, Naruto said to the two other Kages present, so, the tension of war has finally reached Konoha again, while he sighed. The fifth Uzukage, Mei Terumi, leader of Kirigakure no Sato, is depicted on the right, sitting behind a desk, without the traditional Kage Haori, but wearing the traditional hat with the deep blue kanji for water on it. She is a slim, busty woman in her 30s, with green eyes, ankle-length auburn hair styled in a herringbone pattern at the back, a top knot tied with a dark blue band, and 4 bangs at the front, 2 short, one covering her right eye, and 2 long, crossing each other on her bust, just below her chin. She wore a dark blue, long-sleeved dress that hung just below the knees. It appeared to be zip-locked at the front, and it was left open from the front, right side from the waist down. Underneath, she wore a mesh shirt that covered more of her upper body than her dress, but left a sizable cleavage visible. Underneath that, she wore a skirt of the same color as her dress, and underneath that, she wore mesh leggings that reached down over her knees. Around her waist, she wore a belt with a pouch attached to the left. She wore dark blue polish on her fingers and toes, and she typically wore fuchsia lipstick. In contrast to her, the person standing next to the Uzukage does not wear the traditional Kage Haori, but he does wear the traditional hat with the yellow kanji for lightning on it. He is the leader of Kumogakure no Sato, the 4th Reikage, and he is a tall, dark-skinned man with a large muscular build, blonde hair combed back, black eyes, a prominent crease across his forehead, pointed canines, and a darker shade on his top lip than his bottom lip. Qualities he inherited from his father, the 3rd Reikage. He also has black Fuma shuriken tattoos on both shoulders. In contrast to other Kages, he regularly dons his Kage Haori and hat without a shirt underneath, showcasing his massive body, black pants, and a green kilt that falls below the knees. He wears a gold belt around his waist with an engraved boar's face in the middle, and gold bangle bracelets on each wrist that have protrusions that can protrude when he attacks. Mei began by saying, Uzukage, we know you well and how you are. After that, she trailed off and turned to A for assistance. A hurriedly continued for the Uzukage, we want to make sure you're okay about this. You still care about people who live in Konoha, right? We want to know what you plan to do about this, Uzukage. We owe you a great deal, Naruto-kun, for all that you have done for Kumo and Kiri. Are you certain we can't help you in any way? The Uzukage inquired in a soft and kind tone. Sighing, Naruto settled into the chair by the wall and said, I'll be alright. I appreciate you sending the offer, Mei. Placing his hand on his forehead, as if to take a temperature, he says, if Konoha makes it out alive, I'll try to save my faithful friends. This is not a problem for Uzushio or any of your villages, but for Konoha. You have the right attitude of a Kage. A grinned and nodded. With a solemn expression, he posed the terrible query the two Kage were trying to avoid. How did you learn of the impending conflict? Orochimaru and his Sound Army are the ones who organized this war, the Reikage said, stepping forward to respond. Otto and Iwa require more authority now that Orochimaru is dead and Sasuke Uchiha is on his own. They sent an ambassador to Kumo and Kiri a couple of days ago asking for our assistance, he added, sitting down in one of the chairs in the room. He thought that if he recruited one of us, he could also recruit the other two. But you turned it down? The blonde Kage inquired. We certainly did, he roared, and Mei simply smiled and nodded. That idiot initially believed I was being tough. He even went so far as to say that if we helped, we could get the Byakugan. Haha, yes, exactly. As though we'd go so far as that. His black eyes, like Naruto's blue ones, remained motionless. If Kiri helped, Mei said irritably, they even say we could get help in reforming the 7 ninja swordsmen. The Man of Steel, who is opposed to such things, says, I know we did in the past, but things were different, and he conveys regret and sadness in his eyes. And again, I express my deepest apologizes. Then Naruto dismisses it, saying, it's alright, Reikage. You know, what's in the past stays in the past. Furthermore, it shouldn't matter because I'm no longer with Konoha. Thought I couldn't save the 3 Tails, Shukaku, or Utakata and the 6 Tails. I was able to get Gaara revived as well as save Yugito and the Taki Jinchuriki. Fu from Akatsuki who both are now my wives, Naruto said, before grinning and adding, anyway, How is Killer Bee doing? He learned to fully control Kurama's power after he became an ally of Kiri and particularly Kumo, and after he had saved her for Hidan and Kakuzu. Fu was able to do the same with her tailed beast, the seven-tailed rhinoceros beetle, or Chome as he was known. His father, Minato Namikaze, unexpectedly showed up when the seal was opened to fight Kurama, and his mother, Kushina Uzumaki, came to his aid as he was gradually losing to Kurama's hatred. Minato told Kushina what he had witnessed throughout their son's life, but Naruto said it was alright because he was happy now, and Kushina was ecstatic when he informed them that he had rebuilt Uzushio and was reviving the Uzumaki clan. However, Kushina ran up to him and hugged him, saying, "Thank you." After his training was finished, he told everyone about it. Now if only he could tell Tsunade, Bakken and perverted sage about it. And with their help, he defeated Kurama and took her most of her chakra for a while. Before they faded into the afterlife, he said he was glad to be their son and promised to make them proud. Minato simply gave him the thumbs up. After closing his eyes, he grinned and said, "He is just as much of a pain as usual, even without Yugito around." The man's face was marked with a tick. His response, "At least you have a brother that loves you," made Naruto laugh heartily. "I could have saved mine, but I was unaware that Sasuke had left Konoha once more." The blonde Jinchuriki's eyes took on a hateful, hardened expression. "I could have done more if it weren't for the fact that we have been hiding our true abilities of our villages and our alliance. That bastard will pay the next time we meet in battle if push comes to shove," Naruto confidently said, raising his fist. "Yes, and with the spy I have within Konoha, I'll end this meeting with a handful of knowledge," he replied with a smirk. Both Naruto and the Mei's eyes enlarged in shock at this. "What did you find out?" the Uzukage asked, returning to the conversation. "It seems that in order to return him to Konoha, Sasuke had a team sent after him." The others rubbed their chins at this. One of the teammates was tasked with killing him. He went on, observing their appearance. "He is under a special Anbu division called Root. Danzo Shimura, the elder, is in charge of this division." "I understand. Are you familiar with Naruto-kun?" the Uzukage inquired. After saying, "Yes, he is one of the people that had me banished," Naruto continues, "and then I guess that could mean that this man has connections with Orochimaru. And it appears Sasuke got the training he wanted after all," he adds, chuckling slightly. "He is most likely pursuing Itachi because he knows him." They remain there in silence, taking in what has been said thus far, and then, after a few minutes, they resume the conflict where they left off. "It's time for green eyes to meet blue ones. As much as I hate to be the bearer of the bad news, that isn't the only reason Kumo denied their offer," the speaker said. "Uzukage, what do you mean?" Gazing at the Uzukage, Naruto posed the question. "Just, Suna," Mei said. Naruto nodded and said, "I see," which was all he needed to hear. No, Kiri owes you, Naruto-kun. The people of Kiri would have had you become Uzukage if it weren't for the fact that Uzushio was being rebuilt and they wanted the last known member of their honorable clan to be their Kage," Mei said with a sorrowful smile. "And you take it away, Mei? Humph, not in my opinion." Naruto assuredly addressed Mei, "You deserve the seat, Mei." A grinned and joined the discussion, saying, "Well, she has a point, Naruto. Not only did you bring back the 7 ninja swordsmen of Kiri, but you also restored pride to a civil war-torn country and ended the 4th Uzukage's tyranny." Naruto simply shrugs his shoulders. Mei has been devoted to Kiri for years since the 4th's passing. She was the most sensible option. Then, with a sly smile, he said, "But it did take until I took you out on a date to convince you to take the job and to stop you from being so flirtatious all the time around me." Mei looked back in bewilderment. The woman's face flushed and she screamed, pouting and crossing her arm beneath her enormous bust. "Hey, Naruto-kun, what happened to leaving things in the past?" Her response was met with a quick, hearty laugh from the other Kage. "Well, let's get back to the topic. Now, what are you going to do?" The Uzukage cleared her throat before asking. He got up and said, "I think I'll meet the swordsman at the bar and stay another night in the hotel before heading home." The Raikage then developed an odd expression. "But, then it'll take another 2 days to get back to Whirlpool," he said. "You know what, something happened before you came here." Because of his enhanced senses, Naruto was able to hear the other's whispers as he walked away, blushing at the question and thinking about what awaited him back home. "Guess you hit the mark, eh? Yeah, I wonder what Yugito has planned for him this time around." As the distant sound of their laughter fades, Naruto shook his head. In a neighborhood bar in Kiri, 7 of the 8 most deadly ninja in the entire Kiri forces are seated around a square table, 3 on each side and 1 at the end. They are the current 7 ninja swordsmen of Kiri. the world's most lethal swordsman. Last but not least is Sentaro Ishigochi, the second.in command, a 6 feet 2 inches blonde man with dark gray eyes that have a glassy appearance from too many drinks. He wields the Shibuki, also known as the blast sword. The line of the two female members, one of whom is a twin brother to her, begins to his right. Her name was Kagura Enkai, and she was blonde with emerald eyes, standing 5 feet 9 inches tall. Her attitude is what most people will notice about her the most, and it can be paired with a snake kunoichi from Konoha. Her bloodlust in battle is something to be feared, and although she can dress appropriately, she occasionally leans toward the more skin approach. She wields Kabutowari, also known as the blunt sword. The only other female swordsman, Sayuri Yuki, is next to her. She is one of the 3 remaining members of Kiri's Yuki clan, along with her twin brother and cousin Kimiko. At first glance, she appears to be 5 feet 6 inches and extremely beautiful, with flowing black hair and deep blue eyes. However, if you get on her bad side, she will strike with her speed and sword, making her a worthy adversary. She is the wielder of Nuabari, also known as the longsword. Her twin brother Sansei Yuki, who makes women weak in the knees with his black hair and gorgeous green eyes, is sitting next to her, laughing at her current days over the recent joke about her. It is not surprising to see him out in a club with the rest of the group because he would be working if he didn't, but he doesn't appear to be in any better shape than the others. He is the wielder of the Kiba, also known as the Thunder Swords. Opposite Sansei is 6-foot Shin Momochi, Zabuza Momochi's younger brother, who resembles his older brother in clothing, has dark brown hair, cobalt eyes, and is a master of the silent killing, exceptional swordsmanship, and water release specialist. He is also the owner of Zabuza's sword, the Kabikirabocho, also known as the Sever Sword, which was returned from Zabuza's gravesite in Wave. To the right of Shin is Suigetsu Hazuka, the brother of Kiri's Mangetsu Hazuka, leader of the new 7 ninja swordsmen of Kiri, and reputed along with Shin as the second coming of the demon. While him and his clan has a bloodline, at use of water release nature manipulation and can use his clan's main secret technique to liquefy his body at will, they were also known as excellent assassins. In ways, he is like his late older brother. At a height of 5 feet 8, he had straight white hair with a light blue tint to it, purple eyes, and like all members of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist pointed teeth, one of which sticks out even with his mouth closed. He was rescued by chance when Naruto stumbled across the hideout that held him. After releasing him, Naruto asked if he wanted to help bring back the 7 ninja swordsmen. We accepted in a heartbeat. While he tried each one of the swords with the exception of the Samahada, aka the Great Sword, which was still in the possession of Kisame Hoshigaki, he chose to become the wielder of when he gets it. For now, he wields a massive Zanbato sword until then. The newest member of the 7 ninja swordsmen, Chojuro, sits to his right, quietly enjoying the gathering. He is about 5 feet 4, has dark eyes and short, tufty blue hair, and is dressed in a blue pinstriped shirt and camouflage patterned pants. He also has his forehead protector on the front of his holster, which he uses to carry Hiramekure, also known as the twin swords. It's odd that so many ninja from a village will wear the same outfit, with little to no changes, except those who are going with their own taste. This is just one of the many unexplained neutralities of the shinobi world and their behavior. Since none of them are carrying their swords, their outfits look like those of any other ninja, with the exception of the slight difference. "You didn't, Kagura, did you?" As he laughed at her story, Suigetsu questioned her. She gushed another shot of sake and said, "Fufufu, I'm serious." He went all shades of red. He would have died of blood loss if it weren't for the brat's healing ability. Shin chooses to share his thoughts while sipping from his saucer cup, saying, "To think Naruto Sama would get a nosebleed from such an immature action." The others give him perplexed looks. "Want to elaborate, Shin?" Curious to hear what his friend had to say, Sansei asked. His curiosity was piqued by Shin's statement, "I'm surprised you didn't notice it, Sansei," after he took another swig of his sake. Most people were unaware that Suigetsu and Shin are highly perceptive individuals. He glances at the other people. Before he met the two of you, he was married to Hinata Sama for, 2 or 3 years? Kagura shrugs when he asks, surely they consummated the wedding before then. He also had Jiraiya, a perverted Sanin, as a sensei. It makes sense that his response would be less perverted. Chojuro began nodding his head, saying, "I see. According to Hinata Sama, she will stop at nothing to express her love. Surely he has made an anti-pervert tolerance of some sort," the two swordsmen say, their faces turning lecherous. "I believe you get the idea if you combine his sexy technique with his shadow clone technique." As some of the men wiped their faces of their recent nosebleed, it was evident that our friend had consumed a bit too much alcohol. He muttered under his breath, if it was me, I probably would have stripped to join the two of you, though not as low as he had intended because some of the group members paled at what he had just said. Oh, he said, looking up to see the leader and female members glaring at him, was that what I said aloud? While the leader simply perspired, the two women buried their faces in the bar's floor. The rest of the group is giggling at his remark. To the delight of the bar owner, they continued to share their stories and drink sake after they had settled down. Unfortunately, Shojiro doesn't elaborate. He simply lacks confidence when it comes to speaking with others. Sentaro reached for another bottle of sake, thinking, it would be nice if he had something to say. Sansei is chastised for his earlier remarks for the next few minutes. They resume their conversation and joke. Telling after a few minutes. They are so engrossed in their conversation that they fail to notice the person who is going to enter. When a new customer arrives, the bell above the door rings. The bartender exclaimed, hello, what can we do for, Uzukage? Sama? Whatever can we do for you? Almost everyone nearby stopped when they heard this and turned to see the Uzukage in person. With the best view, Sansei gazed at the door. Naruto stood looking around the bar, still wearing his cage haori. He was waved over by Suigetsu and Sansei. Suigetsu shouted, hey, Naruto, we're over here, in an attempt to get his attention. He sees his friends when he turns to face the place where he heard his name. He smiles and returns the wave. He walks over and tells the bartender he will be joining them. He sat at the opposite end, opposite Sentaro, and said, hey guys, long time no see. He sat down and said, so, what you guys talking about? Sayuri said in a charmingly playful tone, oh, nothing really. Just about the time you came across Kagura and Hinata. Sama in their birthday suits at the hot springs. He instantly recalled that moment and had to suppress an incoming flush, and he was defeated in that fight. The key word was, trying. He blurted out, I have no idea what you're talking about, and everyone laughed, at his expense this time. Shin stopped laughing and said, ha ha ha, we're just messing around man. Lighten up, will ya? Give me a minute, Naruto said, turning around. Hey, bartender. Get a couple bottles of sake over here. A waiter arrived with 2 fresh bottles of their finest sake in less than a minute. He bowed slightly and said, anything else, Uzukage, Sama? No, just make sure it goes on my bill and not theirs, he said, pouring his drink onto a saucer plate. Oh, and lighten up guys. Stop with all the UNNED formality. The waiter shouted as he started to leave, and everyone nodded. He then went off to attend to the other patrons strewn about at the tables he oversees. Naruto smiles up at his companion as he pours another glass, saying, this should loosen me up. Shojiro inquired, so Naruto, how is Uzushio? Fine. The rebuilding was ahead of schedule. We now have all the sections that we had before, he said with a grin. And with the original blueprints and a little help from some old friends, I can officially say Uzushio is now standing at 150%. They all give their friend a smile. That's good, Sansei replied, so it's as if Uzushio's destruction never happened. Profit is good and stable, I hope. Naruto replied, correct, and then took another sip. Good. Now when are you and the missus going to have a kid? Kagura is getting impatient for a little godson or goddaughter to hang out with, Suigetsu said. Naruto spits out when he hears this. Fortunately, everyone in the vicinity dodged the blast. Well, the blonde-haired man said, breathing a little heavily. Kagura, unable to speak, chooses to express her opinions. Yee. I mean, come on, when the fuck are you and Hinata going to pop one out already? She began to scream. You've already promised me the position of godmother for your firstborn. Naruto questioned in confusion, when the hell do we make that deal? I don't even remember making such a deal. With a sly smile, Kagura told him, well, it was more along the lines of Hinata promising me after I didn't beat you up after getting a look at me. Well, that clarifies that question, he thought irritably. Plus, I thought you liked me? She asked, her eyes watering and her voice hurt. Now hold on there, he exclaimed, gesturing with his hands. In an attempt to lift her spirits, he said, I never said I didn't like you. I think you'll be a great godmother for mine and Hinata's firstborn. She started feeling better as soon as he said the magic word. Kagura grinned and said, why thank you. I'll be glad to be the godmother of your firstborn. Ha, a sucker. Sentaro looked at him gravely and said, well, that's good and all, but what about Yugito? Sama and Kimiko. Sama, how are you 3 getting along? Suigetsu smirked and said, and don't forget that girl, Fu from Taki. Naruto replied, fine. My wives and I are fine, with a sparkle in his eyes. Sayuri said, I've seen that look before, with concern. What's wrong? Oh, nothing, Naruto responded. I was just remembering how everyone reacted when it all started. Then everyone muttered, recalling the agony, more accurately, the drama, that occurred at the beginning of the year. Rewind, at the conclusion of the Konoha Chunin exams, 6 months after saving Fu. In the Uzushio Council chambers, Naruto, the 7 swordsmen, Hinata, Yugito, Fu, and Kimiko are gathered alongside Kumo, Kiri, Mei, and A, as well as the Council of Uzushio. Yugito is standing there looking angry. She had dark eyes and long, straight, blonde hair that was tied back with tight bandages. She wore purple fingerless gloves, a chain of white beads wound around her left hand, black pants with a cloud-like design, and a short, sleeved black and purple blouse. She also wore sandals, a kunai holster strapped to her right thigh, and the standard Kumo forehead protector. In addition, she had a red belt around her waist and bandages on her arms and legs. She crosses her arms over her chest. The wrapping around her hands and elbows is causing her to fidget. On Naruto and Hinata's right was Fu, Naruto's second wife. Her short, spiky mint green hair matched her orange eyes, and she wore it in an orange clip. Her complexion was either caramel or light brown. She was dressed in a similar ninja costume as Sakura, which included a short sleeveless white midriff shirt with fishnet armor underneath, long white armlets, and fishnet shorts with a short white apron skirt over them. She wears the Uzushio swirl on her right arm as a forehead protector. Additionally, Fu had a cylindrical object wrapped in red on her back that she used to hold insects that she could use, such as the Aburame clan. On Yugito's right were Naruto and Hinata. Other than the traditional hat with the cerulean kanji for whirlpool on it and the cloak he wore over a full-length gown, his outfit hasn't changed much since he and Hinata left Jiraiya and Tsunade. He also wore a long black bandana with an Uzushio forehead protector attached. The Uzushio swirl occupies a significant amount of the mid-back and is located in the dead center of the back. Hinata's attire was unchanged except for the symbol on the back of her jacket and a blue cloth around her neck that served as an Uzushio forehead protector. Standing to their right is a girl with light brown hair who appears emotionless. Nevertheless, there was only a hint of disappointment in her chocolate brown eyes. She had a green scarf around her neck that looked blank. To hold her sword dangling on her back, she is dressed in a gray short sleeve shirt with a black slit. She is wearing gray Shinobi class pants that match. Behind Naruto and the others, the swordsmen are broken. Members of influential figureheads and strong clans make up the councils. There is a well-known elderly man in the Uzushio Council, though Tsunade, who is still as old as ever, happens to be there. Now that everyone is here, we can start this meeting, Ace said as he got up. I'll leave the first priority to the Uzushio Council. Between the two larger groups, he gestures with his hand to the small group of 5. Thank you, Recounting. Sama, the older gentleman said. Naruto Uzumaki, as you know, you're the last of the Uzumaki clan that once resided in Whirlpool before its downfall. Naruto gave the statement a nod. With the help from Kumo and Kiri, thanks to you, we now have the village up and running again. Another member, a woman, went on. The people and every member of this council have decided. We want you to become our first Uzukage. Naruto and a few other people in the room both widened their eyes. Hinata simply grinned impatiently at him. His only response is, I don't know what to say. Yes, I'll take the job, would suffice brat, Tsunade sneered. As one of the council members put it, Tsunade-san, please. He glanced at the others and said, please what? We go a long way back to when he was just a shrimp-sized brat. They sort of break off their argument when they laugh. Yeah. Well, you're still the old drunk that keeps getting bigger around the middle, Naruto shot back at the man when he stopped laughing. Kimiko and a couple of the swordsmen snickered at that, while Yugito laughed. Hinata even let out a little laugh. She gently remarked, oh Naruto-kun. Show some respect for the old man, much to the amusement of the others. Ha ha ha, well, I think this took a little side trip, Mei said in an attempt to take back control of the conversation. The same elder who opened the meeting said, I think you're correct, Uzukage. Sama. Now Naruto. Sama, do you accept the position? He said gravely, I'd be happy to accept the position of Uzukage if that's what the village wants. Good. Now with that, we will explain how the council in Uzushio works. First, unlike in other villages, we hold practically no power whatsoever. You hold the main power. Seeing how our daimyo left, Whirlpool and Uzushio were only able to rebuild thanks to Kumo and Kiri. It was only recently that the daimyo of Wave has agreed to have their youngest heir become our new daimyo. He will do just fine and bring a new age to Whirlpool. Third, like most hidden villages, only the top jonin of our people that the village can agree and trust may be on it. While you are a clan leader, you cannot have a saying in a matter. So you're going to have your wife or heir when old enough take the seat and not hold any biased decisions. He took a deep breath. Naruto raised an eyebrow and said, understood. Now what else does that mean if I have all the power? Over the years, he has discovered the importance of exercising caution when it comes to politics. Looking at Tazuna, he said, Tazuna-san, can take the rest from here. Tazuna turned to Naruto after giving him a stern look and said, well, kid, it means you don't really have to concern the council at all. Sigh, the only real reason it exists in our case is to give advice on certain affairs and help with the civilian things that don't concern you. I'm getting too old for these speeches, he thought, taking a deep breath. After saying, and we report things to you. That is all, Tazuna concluded. The only reason we have power now is because of you being a cage, no less. Good to know, Naruto stated thoughtfully. That's good, well for him, Yugito said in frustration, but why the fuck am I here then? Her loudness makes the Kumo and Kiri councils wince, and they turn to face their cage. They know what to do, and the councils nod. To speak, the Recounting moves forward. He didn't want to put up with her yelling today, so he yelled, silence Yugito. We're just getting to that. She took a step back, even though she didn't like it. Then a turn to face Mei. The Uzukage nods now and moves forward. Kimiko. Bowing her tan hair, the girl said, yes Uzukage, sama? I bet you are wondering the same thing as Yugito, sama? She responded. Yes Uzukage, sama, was her courteous response. She pointed to Yugito and remarked, you, my dear, are here for the same reason as her. But, the answer you seek will be given by the councils, the Recounting said. The center group, who have nothing to worry about, simply whistle and shrug their shoulders. The members of the Kumo Council, however, are more concerned about the potential outcomes than those of Kiri. Gulp, as you both know Kumo, Kiri now shares an alliance with Uzushio, a Kumo man said. One from the Kiri side began, it's only there for their protection during rebuilding, but, now both Kiri and Kumo wish for a more permanent alliance. And that deals with us how? Yugito asks, raising an eyebrow and becoming irritated. How come I don't like the way this is going? Something is whispered by the same Kiri member. Kimiko said, I'm sorry, elder, but I couldn't hear that, as she prepared her sword dangerously. Kagura turned and said, I believe they called us to clean up the bodies, in a whisper into Sentaro's ear. With a simple nod, he said, seems that way. Looking at his teammates, Suigetsu grinned and said, okay, who wants to bet on who is going to die here today? That question caused everyone to fall apart except for him and Shin. Shin shook his head at the behavior of his fellow swordsmen. Shin said, I think they are scared shitless and want our protection from those two, in a somewhat blunt manner. Really? I had no idea, said Sayuri mockingly. To their surprise, Sentaro said, I'm not helping them at all. I'm no fool. I stand no chance against two enraged Jinchuriki, and if they are heading in the direction I believe they are, I'm not going to face Hinata. Sama's wrath of non. Gentle fists again, he said. Recalling how he and Sentaro had enraged Hinata, Sansei went pale. Not kind at all. As he recalled striking his crotch with a gentle fist, he reflected. She rarely gets angry, but when she does, she can be very cruel and vicious. This is becoming more surprising by the moment. As the meeting's purpose became clear to him, the new blonde Cage pondered. He muttered, and arranged married, much more clearly than this time. Still can't hear you Counselor.san, Kimiko said in an overly affectionate tone. One of the new Kumo council members exclaimed, oh for the love of God, you guys are truly pathetic. You two are arranged to marry Naruto. Sama to issue a peaceful and secure alliance between the three hidden villages. What? Was the collective exclamation of the four women standing close to the blonde Cage. According to the same elder, I don't think that's too much to ask. You five get along fine. Naruto is motionless as he stands there. He simply blinked, startled. His thoughts were jumbled, and he thought, I think I am going crazy. He hears Kurama laughing uncontrollably in the back of his mind. Between fits of laughter, the great tailed beast uttered, damn Naruto. 4 wives, ha ha ha. That is more than some humans in Hanju can handle. Ha 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 ha, ha ha ha. I wonder what Matabi and Chome think about this. But Naruto never had the opportunity to mentally react to the multi-tailed vixen's taunts. Yugito Ni was obstructing his thoughts for the yelling protest of one. Before focusing on Naruto, she managed to utter, "Damn you. When? How? Why? I'm gonna kill you." A calmly told his shinobi, "Now, calm down Yugito," hoping to stop her from doing something foolish. "We thought you would understand," Mei told the irate Kunoichi. She began to say, "Kimiko, but was interrupted by Kimiko's action. Kimiko simply approached Naruto, who was still in disbelief. She grabbed his head and leaned on her toes because, regrettably, she is a few inches shorter than him. Then she forced him into a kiss by drawing him to her lips. At the scene, all noise ceases. Naruto blinks a million times and gets really wide-eyed. Jaws drop to the ground. When will they require air? Holy cow. Was it a tongue? Some of the people in the room thought these things. Others are simply too stunned to come up with anything. Fu and Hinata clenched their fists and snarled to themselves. Hinata did less than Fu. "I'm going to get that bitch in the SSU. Damn, Yugito just stares with his mouth hanging open. I am aware of his good looks, but perhaps Hinata and Fu would be willing to share. Kimiko doesn't, apparently." Matabi, the two-tailed monster cat, sealed in Yugito, said in a feline voice, "What's wrong, Yugito-chan? Upset you didn't think of that. Quit talking. It's been 5 minutes, how long?" To her tailed beast, she thought. Unbeknownst to her, Kurama and Hinata were conversing similarly. However, Kurama and Chomei were attempting to explain things and soothe Hinata and Fu. However, Hinata whimpered in her head. Kurama told her Jinchuriki's soulmate, "Don't worry Hinata. Just talk with them after this is over. Took them long enough, it looks like they're stopping." The tailed beast responded, "Relax Fu. I am sure you and Hinata can work something out." To Chomei SSU, Fu's whimper. The mental chatter ceased then. Naruto closed his eyes during the lengthy kiss. His second Kimiko was that one. The first was that when she tried to kiss him, he didn't pull away. Kimiko smiles and opens her eyes, separating her lips from his. She said sweetly, "It's a pleasure to serve you, Naruto-kun." For the others, that was the final straw. As Fu added, "SSU," to the end of each sentence, Yugito and Fu screamed, "All right. That's it. Let me at her." Because a fight started when they all jumped the girl at that moment. Naruto exclaimed, "Wow," as his brain reanimated. Unfortunately for him, the girls engaged in combat heard him and halted their rumble. One thing came out of their mouths as they slowly turned their heads and gave him frightful, angry looks that would have made Sakura's pale in comparison. "You're dead. You're dead SSU, flashback end." Naruto takes a long gulp of the remaining sake from his bottle, shivering from the past, saying, "I still have scars from that day." Some of the group's male members' faces come back to life as they feel sorry for their former friend. There are some unwanted reminders of that fateful meeting for them as well. "At least it worked out. Who would have thought that they just needed to talk it out?" said Shin. "True, but enough about me. What have you guys been up to?" Naruto said with a nod of agreement. The following morning, close to Kiri's outskirts. When Naruto saw the hangover appearances of the people he spent the previous evening with, he exclaimed, Thank God alcohol doesn't affect me that much." If there was anything for which Kurama should be grateful, it would be that, he told the fox in his mind. "Why thank you Naruto," the tailed vixen's voice said. "Should I tell Hinata you're on your way home?" By the way she spoke, Naruto could tell that something was wrong. Just listening to her laugh made him wonder, why'd I not like the way that she said that? With a wave of her hand, Kagura says, "Hey, Earth," to Naruto, before him. She screamed directly into his face, "Anyone home? Hey, are you listening to me?" He replied, shaking his head. And he rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. "Oh, Kagura. Sorry about that," he mentioned. She then smiles slyly. "You got to warn us when you talk to the 9 tails, she says. Or was it Hinata-chan? Whatever, he muttered as he left Kiri and headed for the main road. He waved to them over his shoulders and said, "I guess I'll go back now." He goes through the hand seals, boar, dog, bird, monkey, and ram, biting his thumb to extract blood. He yelled, "Summoning technique," and slammed his blood-stained hand down on the concrete. A huge cloud of smoke appeared. A huge orange toad emerged from the smoke. This toad could compete with a 4-story structure. When the toad asked, "Yo Naruto, what's up?" it smiled. Naruto grinned and said, "Not much. Mind giving me a ride back to Uzushio, Gamakichi?" Gamakichi scowled in response. "We toads don't like salt water. We love that you made those fresh water lakes on your clan estates, but Naruto we hate seawater," Gamakichi said, letting out a sigh before continuing. With a sheepish scratch on the back of his head, Naruto says, "Right. Guess I forgot about that Gamakichi." Gamakichi began to perspire. He said, "You forget a lot of stuff, Naruto," and shook his head. "So, what you need?" "Well," he began, adopting a contemplative stance. "I need to get back, or I am in bigger trouble than when I left. So, can you give me a ride to the docks on the west side of the island?" He grinned in response. "That, Naruto, I can do," he said. Then Naruto leapt onto his back. Waving to the group of swordsmen, Naruto said, "See you guys next time I'm in the village," clearly in pain from a severe hangover. Shin said, "Yeah. See ya," and walked away. Kagura said menacingly, "You had better have started on giving me a godchild to spoil next time we met. And bring your wives over next time. And you better come to visit Sayuri and me when you get back next time," Sensei said, attempting to shake off his hangover. Gamakichi began to leave after he said, "Okay, see you next time." He shouted, "Let's go Gamakichi," as they leapt or jumped off. Naruto then set out to return home. He would have run into some old friends if he had stayed a little longer. Later that evening, a strange trio with a large dog came into the village from the opposite side. Wearing civilian clothes, Kiba remarked, "Well, that boat ride was more informative than I thought it could be. Who would have thought that Kiri has a new cage and the 7 ninja swordsmen of Kiri is back? We need to be more careful than I originally planned," Kurinai said as he reflected. "I'll go find a place to stay. You two look around, but are careful," she cautioned them. "We will meet back here in an hour and call it a night." With a bark, Kiba and Akamaru fled to the right, saying, "Right, let's go boy." Shino said, "I go this way," and he turned to the left, leaving Kurinai to continue straight. As she fades into the background, she thinks, "I hope Guy's team is doing better." In Kumo, he blew his cover with the Kumo.nin now on them after a man with large eyebrows sneezed. Tenten inquired, "Are you alright?" Guy said, "I'm fine, but we got to go," as they ducked under a lightning release move. A voice abruptly said, "You four aren't going anywhere," as a group of 6 Kumo Anbu surrounded them. Guy assumed a taijutsu stance and said, "Neji, how many are there? Are there more coming this way?" Byakugan. Neji's eyes have noticeable veins, and she remarks, "It looks like there are these 6 and 4 ready to back them up." "Give up and you'll be spared," said the Anbu wearing a dragon-shaped mask. "Or you could fight and die." "I take it you are the leader of this team?" Guy responded. "That I am," he says, gesturing to his man. "Now it's your turn. Why are Might Guy and his team, Konoha's sublime green beast of prey, here?" Lee said, "Guy. Sensei, we can take them," adopting his teacher's posture. Guy remarked, "No Lee, this is a dangerous situation," while attempting to come up with a strategy. "They can eliminate us during our retreat if we fight because we will be weaker." He gave it careful thought. "We can buy some time to recover and form a plan if we surrender." Neji, Tenten, Lee, "Yes Sensei," they all yell at once. He said, "I'm afraid, my youthful students, we must be youthful and surrender," much to the surprise of his group. He reassured them, saying, "That was a wise decision, my friend. Men, arrest them. Now you'll continue to live," before shrugging and adding, "or not. It all depends on your judgment by Reikage. Sama." Well, that was a waste of comfort. To her chagrin and dismay, Tenten dropped her staff with one end blade. "I also just got it." Lee is a tall man. Not even recognizing the limitations, but like Guy, Neji was trying to figure out how to get out of this mess. "Next time, though, don't go yelling about youth," one of the Anbu said. "You almost had us too. When we saw your faces, we were able to match them with your personality perfectly from the bingo book." The captain said, "True," as he escorted his men and their prisoners out. "You just underestimated us," he said, turning his head slightly to look over his shoulder. "While your clothes change and the way you did things were good. You even hid the Hyuga's eyes. That was a keen decision. But, you didn't do the same to the traits that make you noticeable." Team Guy members simply perspire as a result of this. How did they know that the mission's failure would be due to their attitude? In the past, it has always been beneficial. Furthermore, to believe that they genuinely didn't consider concealing anything more than Neji's eyes. I suppose they didn't anticipate that simple things would allow anyone outside of Konoha to identify them so quickly. An unsettling night sky is created as a thunderstorm begins to roll through and the sky roars with its claps of thunder. Similar to the Hokage Tower, they're led to a tower. The fact that this tower is set into a cliff is the only distinction. After being brought into the Reikage's residence, the inmates were promptly taken to the Reikage's office. The Anbu captain was followed into the cage office by Anbu wearing a snake mask. You four watch them while we go talk to Recounting. Sama, he said. Soon after the Anbu entered the room, someone exclaimed, "What are you waiting for? Bring those idiots in at once." The four surviving Anbu escort the captives into the office without the need for the others to come tell them. When they walk in, they notice that the room is designed similarly to the Hokage office. The only distinction is that it is practically bigger. There are some weights in the corner next to the desk, and the cage desk and chair are the only furniture there rather than a couch and a few chairs. "So you're the team Konoha has sent to spy on my village," Ace said, turning his chair so that the back of it faced them. "She may be strong, but this is a serious crime," he says, turning his chair around to face them while holding Mabui. "Tsunade has some nerve. Tell me everything you were sent to find," he said as 4 seats with Anbu bodyguards materialized. In Kiri, Kurinai said, "Did you two find anything? Has Kiba arrived?" "No, not a thing, sensei." Kiba shook his head in response. As the others turned to face him, they said, "We have a problem." Kurinai turned to the bug user and asked, "What do you mean, Shino?" "And the ones on Kiba sense he has a follower," the bug user said stoically. "I had a few of my bugs attach themselves to you too." Kurinai asked gravely, with a hint of panic concealed on her face, "How long ago was that?" "A while ago, it seems whoever it was needed to find something." Kurinai only said, "We need to get going," as they took off. "What do you want, Kagura?" Kagura pretended to be innocent and asked, "Can't I come to say hi to a fellow swordsman, Shin?" Shin walked around a corner and said, "I have some water boiling. You want any tea? Well, I guess it's good to see you. You want anything? This is my home after all." She replied, "No, I'm fine," from what was probably the living room. "Hey Shin." He returned with a cup of tea and asked, "Yes. What is it?" "I was wondering if you have the latest bingo book," she said as she perused his reading selection. Yeah, I have a copy. You thinking of going and catching some bounties?" he asked after taking a sip and giving it some thought. Kagura grinned and said, "Maybe. But I want to look at something first." He reminded her, "Fine. Just remember, if you beat them too much, the collectors will not be able to recognize them and you might not get paid," before moving to a door and opening it. He vanished into the enigmatic room after saying, "Give me a minute. I keep all that type of stuff locked up in here." He left after 2 minutes and locked the door again. "Here you go," he said, passing her a little book the size of her pocket. She looked through the pages and said, "Let's see. I found him." I knew that Mutt seemed familiar. Then, from the bingo book's Konoha section, she shows him a photo of Kiba Inuzuka and his ninken, Akamaru. Shin gives her a look that says, "Wow. He's the first to get an animal with him. Why are you concerned with him?" Kagura said gravely, "Alert the others. We have spies in Kiri. I saw him and this dog wandering in the streets last night." When Shin realized how serious this was, he strapped his Kubikiribocho, once owned by Zabuza, to his back and dragged it from where it was leaning against the wall. Shin kicked open his front door and declared, "They might have discovered that Naruto was here. I won't let them kill or take him back to be tortured more from that pathetic excuse for a hidden village. Kagura, let's go. I will search for them and stall them. You get other swordsmen and spread the word." So far, Mei was not enjoying her day. She first gets a letter from a saying that Tsunade sent a team to Kiri in addition to Kumo. Shin is now in front of her, telling her that spies have been discovered in the village. She questioned, "And they're from Konoha, are they not?" Much more composed than before, Shin said, "Yes, Uzukage. Sama." "How you know?" "I just received a message from the Recounting saying that his Anbu picked up a team sent to spy on them as well," she told Shin. "Sai, capture them alive. And only use force if the situation calls for it." With some concern for his friend, he inquired, "Should we send a message to Naruto?" "Sama, Uzukage. Sama." She draws a unique 3-prong kunai knife with red engraving and shine to it and says, "Even if we did, he would not be back there until tonight. Let him rest some." She spins her chair around so he can see out the window and says, "If it comes down to it, I'll call both A and Naruto here tomorrow." "Go, you have your orders." Shin exclaimed, "Yes, Uzukage. Sama," before teleporting out of the office. "So, the possible war has reached us," she says, returning to the papers that are covered on his desk. "Looks like Suna will get the help they seek. Naruto-kun cannot fool us. He'll go anyway." Kurinai is strolling down the village's bustling market street with the remnants of Team 8, which is now Team Kurinai. The majority of the people they encounter do not associate with land outside of the water country and their allies, despite their attempts to find out if anyone is aware of the war. Kurinai asked her charges, who do you two think they mean by allies? Kiba said unsurely, I don't know. But Akamaru and I have been picking up a strange sense since we arrived. I wonder if it has anything to do with the strange chakra signature my insects have been feeling. It's faint but here, Shino said. The three paused in the middle of the road and asked, what do you two mean? As he assumed a taijutsu pose, Kiba swore, well, the scent is that, shit. Kurinai blinked, then saw that they were surrounded by 7 ninja. Both men and women were prepared to attack, their weapons drawn. Numerous swords of various kinds are pointed at the group's vitals. The street's residents halted their activities to observe the events. Sentaro said, come quietly and nobody gets hurt, in a song devoid of emotion. The shinobi and villagers who came to investigate the disturbance muttered, could they be the, which confirmed Kurinai's suspicions. The civilian asked his friends, what could have got the 7 ninja swordsmen worked up about? I hate to be them right now, a smirking Chunin guard remarked. Facing the 7 ninja swordsmen is not my idea of a good time. His friends simply nodded in agreement with him. We know you're a shinobi from Konoha. And you are under arrest by order of the 1st Uzukage, he says, lowering his blade into a striking position above his head. I'll repeat, come quietly and nobody gets hurt. The crowd became enraged when it was revealed that they were Konoha.nin. They hear yells of insults directed at them. Some of the local children are hurling trash and dirt at them. Hey, that's enough, the irate sensei cried. We understand why you react this way. But, this isn't what he would have wanted, he said, turning to the audience in a fit of rage. Team 8 is completely perplexed at this point. They aren't concerned about it, though. They cannot receive assistance here if this is how they perceive Konoha. We surrender, Shino declared on behalf of his group. He then began guiding them toward the academy to be placed in the holding cells beneath the tower for special war prisoners. You're a smart man, Aburame.san. Please come with us, he said. To express his thoughts to the crowd, Suigetsu remained behind and said, you should be ashamed of yourselves. This is not what Naruto Sama would want of you. The audience watched in shock. We all know he and his wife, Hinata, were banished from Konoha. But, he has people there that he still loves with all his heart. At this point, people with downcast faces start to like the ground. Suigetsu then leapt to the rooftops and fled to catch up with his fellow swordsmen. How do you know that one of those 3 or all of them are in that small group? You just did the same thing that Hellhole of a hidden village did to him all those years. Praise his old man, the 4th Hokage, but beat him to a fucking bloody pulp, Suigetsu said. People either return home or gradually resume their previous activities. All they could feel was shame. Naruto is a saint to them, and they all love him. The idea of insulting someone he cares about is too much for them to bear because of all that he has done for Kiri and Water Country as a whole. To stop them from crying, some of the kids' mothers picked them up. No world can handle the fragility of innocent minds. The people who hurled objects at the 3 are already sound asleep, their cheeks marred by tears. Under the Uzukage house, the 3 Konoha inmates are being led by the group back to their jail cells. One of the inmates is grinning, not just any smile, though. Kiba had just learned something that made him very happy and joyful, despite the fact that he is a prisoner. It was the first real joy he had felt in a long time. He has a friend who is living well for himself. Additionally, if he succeeds, then he would laugh if he could. He laughs so much that people would assume he's insane. In the hopes that he will live to see him, he makes a settlement. He sees the expressions on his teammates' faces. He will laugh so hard that his sides will pop when they see him again. But first he needs to make sure they survive long enough for that to occur. Furthermore, they will need to figure out a way out of their captivity if that is the case. His current mussing is interrupted by the sound of one of the capture's voices. One of the swordsmen told them, you are going to a special holding cell below the academy. At the next intersection, they turn left. To give them space, the villagers appear to shift to the sides. The hateful glares and head shaking directed at them are the only things that none of them miss about them. Kurinai asked, why don't you take us to the interrogation core of the Uzukage? She thinks about everything, but something doesn't seem right. The person they believe to be the leader asked them, we already know why you are here. Tomorrow, you'll face the Uzukage and the council to determine your punishment. They asked, why would we? Kurinai asked in a startled tone, how do you know that if you don't mind answering? There's definitely something wrong. Shino wished with a rare sincere smile, I hope she can get a more surprised look than that. Is the man in charge of the group responding with, you will see tomorrow. Concerned for his partner, Kiba inquired, what about Akamaru? To his right, a blonde woman holding a sword made of a single-sided axe and a hammer connected by a length of chain said, your Ninken Inuzuka will stay with you, but in a cell across from yours. We cannot allow you to use any of your techniques to escape, without even glancing at them. The group's other female member declared, 2 of us at a time will guard you until the meeting takes place. She chuckled, who knows, you might even learn our names, she said. Now, the one who had remained behind leapt from a nearby roof and joined the group encircling them. When the final group member returned, he apologized, saying, I had to get something off my chest. I'm sorry for leaving you guys earlier. No worries, answered they. I wonder how badly he reprimanded the crowd. Sentaro ponders in his mind. That Uzushio night, Naruto is standing on the porch of the Uzumaki clan's main residence. The actual house is not very large. The residents of Uzushio, Kumo, and Kiri had paid for the typical 4-story mansion. He was unable to persuade them otherwise, no matter what he said or did. Including the master bedroom and built-in bathroom, there were 10 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms. Family scrolls in a library. Additionally, there is a bathhouse on the first floor that functions more like a hot spring. That's not the case with the estate. Together with the old Hyuga compound in Konoha, it is large enough to contain almost 10 blocks. There are smaller lakes dotted across the property, as well as a training ground behind the main house. The fundamental beauty of an estate is obscured by a king's pride. He said to himself, I hope they're all asleep, as he opened the front door. Normally, it is difficult to walk in the dark, but it becomes much easier when you have a demon inside of you that improves your vision. He turns left and climbs the first flight of stairs. He takes care to avoid stepping on any floorboards that have a tendency to make a pleasant wooden squeak. He manages to get to the spiral staircase that leads to the master bedroom and the 5 main bedrooms on the 3rd floor, avoiding obstructions like tables, potted plants, and other decorations, and then reaching the master bedroom, also known as the love suite, on the 4th floor. As he reached for the doorknob, he thought, so far, so good. Only then will I be able to go to bed without waking any of the girls. He opens the door slowly, pausing when it squeaks. He carefully places his right hand on the door with his back to the wall, pushes it shut, and slips through the crack he made in the door. Click here. His eyes enlarge momentarily. Then he looked over at the bed. Holy cow, it's a bed. King and queen sizes are irrelevant. God. Size, that thing is a monster. Well, let's get back to the story. He can see the silhouettes of his 4 beautiful women lying on the bed thanks to his improved vision. The only sound coming from the door was a slight movement. He started for the bed, letting go of a breath he didn't even realize he was holding, but was stopped by a pair of silky hands on his chest and gentle lips of his own. The lights are turned on, and eyes widen. He can only think of one word, and it just so happens that he heard the exact same words from all 4 of the people he saw on the bed. Busted SSU! Exclaimed 4 sexy, lovely voices with delight. All Naruto could do was gaze in stunned amazement at the 4 beautiful women in front of him. Their attractive and arousing sexy sleepwear was on display. The 4 young ladies grinned broadly as they observed their husband's response to their appearance. In front of him was Hinata, dressed in a champagne pink chemise and bikini panties. Fu, wearing a peach camisole and matching boy shorts, was on her left. Yugito, wearing navy blue cheeky panties and a black and purple tank top, was on her right. Kimiko, wearing a red baby doll with scalloped edges and a matching versus string, was on Yugito's right. As he was aroused by their attire, he couldn't help but be in awe of them and stare at them in wonder. They all smiled at his response, lustful but affectionate. With the exception of Fu, who has eye rings around her eyes, their facial whisker lines only serve to increase their sex appeal. Kimiko and Hinata share the same 3 marks as Naruto from Kurama, but Yugito's from Matabi were thinner, and Fu has grayish-blue eye rings from Shomei that were brought on by growing into Hanju. Hinata asked, laughing at the expression on Naruto. Kun's face, well, do you like what you see, Naruto-kun? I think he is, judging from how speechless he is SSU, Fu muttered, grinning, as he approached her. Before Naruto could respond, Hinata pulled him onto the bed in spite of his cries of protest, grinning naively. Then they all stalked over to Naruto, who was giddy with excitement as he saw his women swaying their hips. Before long, they were on either side of him. As he observed his girls' beautiful bodies and beauty, Naruto thought, if only they could greet me like this every time TT Ibeo. Yugito said, you really thought that you could come home late, sneak into bed, and get out of having that talk With us, hun. You're such a bad boy. Naruto.kun, with a sly smile that made Naruto perspire because he was both anxious and excited, which made the girls laugh at his reaction. Lemon. Before he realized what was happening, the four women hurried him and swiftly took off his cloak, jacket, shirt, pants, and forehead protector, throwing them to the ground while they did so while laughing, leaving Naruto as nude as the day he was born. After being mauled by four stunning, seductive, and occasionally frightening women, all he could say was, wow. And did they actually laugh as they did it? When did they turn so evil, man? He could hear Kurama laughing heartily in his head over what had just happened to him. Naruto quickly came to the conclusion that she might have been involved. You were an abominable traitor. Then he heard more laughing and the sound of clothing slamming to the ground. As Kimiko, Yugito, Hinata, and Fu took off their clothes, which were now scattered across the floor, Naruto lowered his head and gazed in awe with wide eyes. With a sultry smirk on her lips and a sway to her hips, Hinata slithered forward, her eyes brimming with passion and intense love. She put her arms around his neck and straddled his waist before abruptly pressing her gentle lips to his. The tender kiss surprised Naruto, but he understood that it was because he hadn't been seeing them much lately, particularly Hinata. I mean, haven't I been hanging out with them? Has he been avoiding Hinata and the others because of the impending war and the recent completion of Uzushio's reconstruction? Before grinning against her sensitive lips, he asked himself, I suppose I'll make up for it to them tonight, primarily with Hinata. And I swear that I won't allow it to occur once more. He closed his eyes quickly and gave her a gentle, passionate kiss in return. She moaned happily as he put his arms around her. Fu, Yugito, and Kimiko gathered around his manhood as they kissed. Naruto then moaned in pleasure as they eagerly began licking it like an ice cream cone. The two main lovers paused their kiss and inhaled deeply. Then Naruto sent shivers of pleasure down Hinata's body by trailing kisses down her neck. He looked at her D-cup breasts and then folded her left breast gently with his left hand, which made her groan a little. Soon after, Naruto closed his mouth over her right breast and started sucking, his tongue playing with her hardened, red nipple. As Naruto sucked and folded her breasts, Hinata gasped and her mouth fell open silently. Hinata let out a scream of pleasure as his fingers playfully teased her left nipple before pinching it. She whimpered, please, don't stop Naruto.kun, as he took his left hand off her breast and replaced it with his mouth. As he moaned at Fu putting his manhood in her mouth, his hand went to her nicely toned stomach. After that, it moved to Hinata's lower body and started massaging her bare breasts. She shuddered from the pleasure she was experiencing and groaned in ecstasy. She eventually got up and covered his face with her crotch. As Naruto licked and sucked her femininity, she groaned. Her body trembled as he swirled his tongue, sucking and swirling her tiny nub while she writhed. Oh Naruto.kun, she exclaimed, trembling and gripping his hair with her fingers. He slowly inserted one finger while his tongue worked inside her, causing her hips to buck. While Kimiko and Yugito licked, folded, and sucked Hinata's breasts, Naruto groaned as Fu kept sucking on his manhood while massaging her own womanhood. She moaned and shuddered with pleasure as Naruto worked his finger in, sliding it in and out. Hinata finally exploded onto his face and finger after a few more seconds, then collapsed onto the bed while gasping for air. Fu said, Hinata, is it okay if I go first SSU? As soon as he stopped sucking his cock and turned to face her. The orgasm had left Hinata exhausted, but she raised her head and said, sure, I don't mind. I wanted to go last anyway. When she heard that, she climbed over him, grabbed his manhood, and used it to rub her entrance. Moaning in satisfaction, she lubricated it with her fluids, set the tip at her opening, and lowered herself onto him, drawing him into her womanhood. She cherished the sensation of him inside of her. Fu moaned with pleasure as he folded her left breast after glancing up at her B-cup breasts. Fu began to move her hips up and down, letting out a cute moan. In order to match her thrusts, he also started to slowly slide in and out of her. They quickly synchronized their thrusts, increasing their speed and depth. Kimiko and Yugito were having a good time while they were doing it, until it was their turn. They were eating each other out while groaning in ecstasy, their crotches in each of their faces. Pulling Fu down with his thrust, Naruto placed her left breast in his mouth, sucking and teased her dark pink, hardened nipple while folding the other. With a gasping groan, Fu's mouth fell open silently as Naruto pounded her, sucking and folding her breasts. They began accelerating their thrusts after a while, sensing that their climax was approaching as their groans became louder. Soon after, Fu lowered her face to Naruto's and kissed him passionately while groaning into their mouths from the thrusts. They both experienced their orgasm after a brief interval. Her fingernails dug into Naruto's back, who groaned as he released his seed inside her, causing Fu's mouth to open and her head to fly back in joy. After resting for a moment, Fu dismounted him and then collapsed back onto the bed, sweating and panting while Yugito and the other two took turns. As Naruto's first wives in Alpha and Beta, Hinata and Fu spent some time together while Yugito and Kimiko had their fun. After cleaning each other of Naruto's leaking seed, they watched as Kimiko and Naruto completed their round. Hinata crawled over to him after she was done and said softly, "Naruto-kun, you up for one more round? It's my turn now." In response, Naruto grinned and said, "Of course, Hinata. I can always go another round for you." "Oh Naruto-kun, you do so much for me. Fu-san, would you like to help us?" Fu then crawled to the two of them and assisted in setting him up at Hinata's door. Then she rubbed him against the folds of her womanhood. She lubricated it for a moment and then positioned the tip at her opening as Hinata leaned back, drawing him deep into her warm, wet vagina, which caused the two of them to moan. With Naruto deep within her, she felt so whole. Naruto called out, "Shadow clone technique," as he lifted his arms, crossed them, and formed a half-tiger seal in both hands while allowing Hinata to rest for a moment. To the delight of Fu, Yugito, and Kimiko, 3 more Narutos appeared. Each took one of his surviving wives and had another passionate sexual encounter with her. Before turning back to Hinata and starting to slowly slide in and out of her, he listened to the moans of their lovemaking, which made her mewl sweetly in ecstasy. Before long, Hinata began to shift her hips up and down in time with his thrusts. As soon as their thrusts synchronized, the pace continued to increase in depth and speed. Hinata cried out in delight as they went deeper and faster. Hinata's chest was reached by Naruto's hands. Hinata thrashed against his pumping as well as his hands. As Naruto withdrew, he reached for Hinata's left breast with his free right hand, causing her to arch against the pressure and drive Naruto's member deeper into her. They both realized they wouldn't be around for much longer when they felt their stomachs beginning to burn. They won't last long either, based on the noise the others were making. Naruto flipped Hinata onto her back and pounded into her more forcefully, trying to saturate as much of the desire as he could. As a result, she wrapped her legs around his buttocks, and the bed began to creak. Hinata was having the time of her life at the moment. She was unable to recall the last time they had such wonderful sex. Before long, their pleasure was beginning to peak. They both experienced their orgasm after a few more pumps. Her fingernails dug into Naruto's back as he followed a few seconds later, letting out a low moan as he released his seed inside her. Hinata's mouth opened and her head flew back, a strangled cry escaping her throat. Naruto rested next to Hinata as they both collapsed, panting and sweating. Soon, the others did the same. Naruto raised his head to give her a kiss after meeting her gaze with his piercing cerulean eyes. Following their brief kiss, Fu, Yugito, and Kimiko joined them on the bed, taking the remaining seats next to Naruto as Hinata lay on him with her head resting on his chest. Then Naruto covered himself and his weary wives with the covers. Let's just say that this was a night to remember for a very long time. In Konoha, Lemon End, Tsunade was reflecting on what had happened that day. More significantly, she was recalling the chat she had with Jiraiya prior to his departure to look into the Akatsuki leader's alleged residence in AIM. When she, Jiraiya, and Orochimaru couldn't defeat Hanzo of the Salamander together, she still couldn't believe that this person had done so. Her concern for him was unavoidable. Would anyone in their right mind not be? To undervalue someone who was able to defeat an opponent that not even you could defeat would be foolish. She remembered the talk on a certain blonde and the wager he had made with her prior to his departure as she gazed out at the night sky across Konoha. Rewind. Tsunade and Jiraiya were sitting on a beach when the sun was setting and the sky was glowing orange. 2 kids were running by, going home because it was getting late. They were discussing the Akatsuki leader in AIM in the past while sipping sake and enjoying some dango at the Shushuya, a Chinese-style restaurant, pub, some time ago. Jiraiya and Tsunade left the restaurant and went into an alley, where she began to throw up after consuming too much sake. After that, they arrived at their current location, where they are unwinding and enjoying the views. Tsunade's face was grim and her cheeks were pink from the alcohol. "Akatsuki," she said. "This guy is able to control a group of such powerful people. Who knows how strong he is? And you want to just waltz right in there? Well, I guess I'll be on my way now." Jiraiya leaned forward and said, before turning away and getting to his feet. She said to him, "Come back alive," but it sounded more like a request than a command. His head perked up as a result, and he turned around somewhat, his face showing signs of touch. Her face was troubled as she trailed off. "If I were to lose you too, I would." With a chuckle, Jiraiya exclaimed, "You'd cry for me? I'm so honored? But not as much as when Dan died, right?" He asked, smiling, turning to face her. She scoffed and said, "Idiot," without even glancing at him. Jiraiya said, "Well, then let's have a gamble, shall we?" And Tsunade turned to face him with a worried expression. "You should bet that I'm going to die." Tsunade's expression changed to one of surprise as he turned his head away from her and said, "Knowing your luck, you'll definitely lose." When he proposed that they place a wager on his life, she simply looked at him in utter shock. She was shocked that he would make such a suggestion. How come he would do that? "Then, if I come back alive," Jiraiya hinted as she stood there with her eyes closed. Then, with a serious expression on his face, he turned to face Tsunade, who returned the look, looking shocked by what he was implying. She looked back at him, her brown eyes shaking, her heart pounding. "I'm just joking. Just joking." Jiraiya then burst out laughing, ruining the moment as he grinned and looked back at her. "I'm really grateful to you." Tsunade was looking at him now with a sad expression on her face, but she didn't understand why he was appreciative of her. According to him, getting dumped makes a man stronger. And if he's not able to laugh it off, he won't be able to fulfill his duties as a man. He then produced a copy of Icha Icha Paradise. After putting it away, he smiles and says, "At least joke about it." Incredulously, she questioned, "So, a man's duty is to be strong?" He responded with a silly smile on his face and his face turned sideways. "You could put it that way," he said. "Besides, men aren't supposed to pursue stuff like happiness." Humph. Stop trying to act so cool. If women weren't around, there'd be no one to dump your ass. Tsunade gazed at him for a moment before closing her eyes and lowering her head with a slight smile. Jiraiya laughed at this and said, "So true." Following that, the two of them were silent for a while. Then Jiraiya looked back at the sun as it was sinking. "If anything happens, use your toads and let me know. I'll get there immediately," Tsunade said, turning to face him after the silence had lasted. Jiraiya said, "There's no need for that," while facing away from her. "You need to stay in the village." With a half-turn, he said, "The village is dependent on you now." With a soft smile and a slightly downturned face, Tsunade said, "There are tons of other candidates for Hokage. The village will never be stable if the leaders keep changing," he shot back, glaring at her from the side. "And there are none better suited for the job than you." She responded, maintaining the same expression, "We have Kakashi here too, you know," raising her head, "and someday, maybe Naruto, as well." When she brought up Naruto, Jiraiya turned to face her and said, "You're really sold when it comes to Naruto, huh?" With a small laugh. "Although, it's understandable. Your brother, Nawaki, your lover, Dan, too," he said, turning his head to her left before turning around entirely. "Because, becoming Hokage is my dream," they said as the images of the three of them appeared in their minds at the same time. Tsunade gazed in wonder at the fictitious picture. After that, she reflected on all the events that had occurred since Naruto entered her life. Jiraiya repeated, "And even Naruto, I guess you can say they were all chasing the same dream," before turning back to her. "Kakashi's a given, so he's able to step in, but Naruto still may have a ways to go, judging from the last time we saw him, even though you gave him that necklace. That is if he can ever return to the village. You have high hopes for him yourself. You even taught him the Rasengan," she said, still grinning. He grinned and said, "Huh. Yeah, I was feeling nostalgic. It reminded me of the days when I was training Minato." Tsunade bent over and gazed at the floor, her eyes narrowing slightly as she reflected on the man. "Minato Namikaze, hun? He certainly resembles him." Minato was a once-in a decade genius. There hasn't been anyone like him in a while. He was a gentle person, but also had nerves of steel and, before you knew it, he became the fourth Hokage, Jiraiya said proudly, closing his eyes with a smile. "I've never had any kids, so I wouldn't know what it's like, but if he were my kid, I'd brag about him all the time," he said, opening his eyes and gazing off into the mountain at his face. With that, Tsunade began to giggle. "Now that you mention it, Naruto isn't that much like him after all. Instead of being a kid that you would brag about, he was mostly just a troublemaking brat. Glancing at him, actually, he's more like his mother." Jiraiya began reflecting on it at this point as well, asking, "Wasn't she a former kunoichi from the Whirlpool country?" "Yeah," Tsunade said, looking at him before reclined and cocking her head to the side in remembrance. "His ninjutsu style and personality are exactly like Kushina Uzumaki's." For Jiraiya, that's when it clicked. He was leaning forward and saying, "Oh, that was her name." Glancing up, that babbling, red-headed tomboy. She was just like one of the guys. She went on to reminisce. Kushina grew up to become a beauty, but Naruto looks like his father. He smiled as he said, "That's why I can see him in Naruto, actually, I've started to look at him as my own grandson. As the street lamps surrounding them began to turn on one by one, indicating that dusk was approaching, Tsunade said, "It's being passed on, from the past to the future, the will of Konoha." Now, for the last time, Jiraiya turned, walked over to his scroll, and picked it up. Tsunade became sad and clutched her blouse tightly as she saw this. She gasped when she realized he was now leaving. After tying it to his waist, she looked up, made some adjustments, and then said, "Well, I'll be heading out now." Her gaze was fixed on his back with worry. He said abruptly, "Oh, that's right," and Tsunade gasped in hope. "I have one last warning for you." "Hey?" she said, sounding perplexed. With a serious expression on his face, he turned his face halfway and said, "Beware of Root." "Yeah, I know," she said, understanding his meaning. He said, "That's good," and then he turned to leave. "See you around," Jiraiya said, raising his right hand into a fist and leaving into the waning sunlight. Tsunade merely gazed at his raised fist, which swiftly transformed into a thumbs up, with trembling eyes. With tears in her eyes that soon trickled down her cheeks, she watched his retreating outline vanish into the tree's shadow despite a gust of wind blowing her hair. Flashback end. She gazed out across the moonlit Konoha for a little while longer, then turned away and made her way to the door, retiring for the night as the memory of the day's events came to an end. "Just don't die, you stubborn old fool," she said as she prayed for his safe return as she shut the door and proceeded down the hallway. "Make it home safely." In Kiri, next morning, in front of Team Kurinai, who had infiltrated her village, Mei sat at her desk. Shin was on her right, and Suigetsu was on her left. The prisoners were surrounded by the other swordsmen. Ao was keeping a close eye on them in the corner, prepared to intervene if the Konoha.nin even attempted a humorous move. Mei looked at the three and the dog, and the situation made her sigh. "We ought to have anticipated Tsunade Sama's antics. I bet you know why you are all here. I received word moments before your capture yesterday from the Reikage that his Anbu apprehended your friends sent to spy on Kumo," Mei said as they looked at her with disbelief. "I'm sorry you had to spend the night in a cell, but you forced my hand when you committed espionage in my village. And I had to be sure of your intentions. I'm guessing that Tsunade Sama sent you here to find out if we were siding with Otto and Iwa or not, am I right?" Kurinai and her accomplices scowled at her. "Yes, Uzukage. Sama. It's as you say. A war is looming on the horizon and we were ordered to find out whose side you're on. I never thought we would be caught, but given that Guy's team had been caught before us, it makes sense we were captured." With a sigh, Mei muttered, "Just as a thought. Naruto.kun will not be pleased with this at all. But, if I may ask Uzukage, Sama, are you siding with Otto and Iwa or Konoha in this war?" Kurinai asked, looking back up at Mei. Mei took a deep breath and sighed. "No, Kurinai-san. Kiri will be neutral in this conflict if it happens. We don't have a grudge or anything against Konoha and we aren't the same Kiri from the time of my predecessor's reign. We don't even have any Jinchuriki anymore. Both captured by the Akatsuki. Through. I'm sure Kumo would have joined Oto and Iwa in the past maybe, but they will also be neutral as well. All due to the ally we both made an alliance with." Team Kurinai became interested in this. "In particular," Kurinai said, "an ally you say?" Uzukage looked at the three of them and nodded. "Yes, it's a village we helped rebuild. The leader of the village helped re-establish the 7 ninja swordsmen, as you can see. In Kumo, he helped create some new techniques for them and shared a few of his own." Suigetsu said worriedly, "Uzukage Sama, are you sure we should give them this info? I don't know if Uzukage Sama would approve," inadvertently omitting the name of the new village's leader, which made the three of them raise an eyebrow. "Uzukage?" Shin gave a nod of agreement. "I agree with him on this, Uzukage Sama. This is sensitive information that is dangerous to his village if it falls in the wrong hands." Mei looked at them and replied, "I understand your concerns, Suigetsu, Shin, but it's alright. Uzushio is already well back on its feet. Uzukage even said that they would have to announce the village's return to the world eventually. Besides, I already sent a message to him before I called them here. Even through its unexpected, I am sure Naruto.kun would want to see his friends again and Hinata to see her team as well. And it's because it's her former team that I'm giving them this information." This caused Team Kurinai to react. Shino's eyes widened, Kiba smiled, and Kurinai gasped when she heard the names of Naruto and Hinata. "Wait. You know Naruto Uzumaki and Hinata Hyuga. Are they all right? How are they doing?" Kurinai then inquired, startled. Mei replied, "Yes, we know them. They're both just fine. They're the reason Kiri and Kumo have changed so much and for the better. They have done so much for Kiri that we cannot thank them enough." Hell, Naruto-kun would have been the 5th Uzukage if it wasn't for the fact Uzushio was being rebuilt and the people wanted the last known member of their honorable clan as their Kage. But, he seemed happy enough to be the Uzushio's first ever Uzukage, the World Shadow. In the past, the leader of Uzushio was the head of the Uzumaki clan who had close ties to Konoha's first Hokage, Hashirama Senju and the Senju clan. It's a shame you couldn't be there for their wedding and the start of Uzushio's reconstruction. They was the happiest moment of their life. Kiba began to giggle and replied, "So, those two finally got together, hun? About time if you ask me. And Naruto finally become a Kage? Man, when Hokage? Sama and Jiraiya. Sama hear about this, they're going to have a field day. And I'm guessing Naruto was here not too long ago?" Kiba told Kurinai and Shino, who turned to him in shock, "I was trying to tell you before we were arrested. I'm guessing you noticed the same thing, right Shino? When Akamaru and I went around the village, we picked up Naruto's scent at several places." Shino gave a nod, "Correct. My insects were able to pick up faint traces of Naruto's chakra." "You're right Kiba-san, Shino-san. He was at a meeting with myself and the Recounting about this possible war and a little of his troubled love life," Mei replied with a smirk and a giggle at his expense. The 7 ninja swordsmen joined in. The 3 Konoha nins looked back at her, perplexed. "What do you mean by that, Uzukage? Sama?" Shino then inquired. Again, the Uzukage giggled at his question and replied with an amused smile, staring off in the distance, "Well, you see, he has married 3 other women since Hinata. The first one was a Taki Kunoichi named Fu, Jinchuriki of the 7 Tails." Kiba and Shino quickly remembered her from the Chunin exam that they were promoted to Chunin. About a year and a half ago, after catching wind of it, Naruto-kun and Hinata rescued her from the Akatsuki when they ambushed her team after the Chunin exam I believe you were also a part of. Taki then wanted to hand her over to them peaceful since they just wanted to be rid of her and didn't want any harm to come to their village. Naruto-kun didn't take too kindly to that. He nearly wiped Taki off the map, if not for Shibuki, the leader of Taki who allowed him to take her with him as he wanted her to be safe and happy. After having to sacrifice some of the 7 Tails chakra to create a decoy in the battle, Naruto-kun, Hinata, and Fu were then able to escape without too much trouble. Since then, they both grew closer until he asked her to marry him, which she accepted. While she was okay with Hinata being married to him, she grudgingly agreed to allow him to marry other women to bring the Uzumaki clan back on its feet. 6 months later, just after being named the Uzukage, he had an arranged marriage set up by me and the Recounting and the Kiri, Kumo, and Uzushio councils to secure our unbreakable alliance. Kiba and Kurinai both exclaimed, "Say what?" in disbelief, as Shino gaped. Laughing, Shin remarked, "Yeah, you should have been there. The girls had a whole hissy fit about it." Mei's laughter grew even louder. She continued by saying, "The Recounting requested Yugito ni, Jinchuriki of the 2 Tails, and I request Kimiko Yuki, one of 2 surviving members of the Yuki clan, a clan known for the ice release Kekkei Genkei." Although there was a bit of a disagreement at first with the current spouses and the future one with Naruto-kun being caught in the crossfire, he and the 2 girls agreed to marry after getting to know each other. Hell, he made Yugito his assistant, mostly because she was older and is more knowledgeable on very important things. And recently, he hasn't been spending much time with his wives, being as busy as of late, with the upcoming war and all. So, I'm guessing they reminded him how much they love him and had their way with him last night. Ha, those lucky girls. The secret message caused Kurinai to flush red, and Kiba's face was beaming broadly with joy for the fortunate bastard. Under his dark sunglasses, Shino blushed pink, but he stayed neutral. "Then the villagers' reaction to us being Konoha.nin, Kurinai asked, shaking her head to get rid of the flush that had appeared on her face. Mei let out a sad sigh. "Yes Kurinai-san. The people of Kumo and Kiri are all aware of the treatment Naruto-kun received back in Konoha and his banishment for being a unstable Jinchuriki, as well as Hinata's for being a demon lover. But you should know that since 2 years ago, Naruto-kun has tamed the 9 Tails and mastered her chakra. And Hinata and Kimiko have also mastered her chakra as well," Mei said with a smile as she turned to face them. Kurinai questioned, "What do you mean by that, Uzukage? Sama?" as the team became once more perplexed by this new information. "That information is personal to Naruto-kun and his wives. You'll have to ask them that yourselves when they arrive," Mei said, smiling and leaning back in her chair. Kurinai nodded and looked at the floor, saying, "I understand." "Anyway," Mei said, gazing out the window, "Naruto-kun should be receiving my message shortly." In Uzushio, at the moment, Naruto was preparing breakfast for himself and his wives while standing in front of the stove in the kitchen. He should make up for his neglect of them since they have done so much for him and Uzushio. His shadow clone, which he created to switch places with before taking a shower, was still sleeping with the wives in the bedroom. They were finally awakened when he finished making it and was setting it on the table, and Hinata, Yugito, and Fu entered the kitchen after donning robes. As he placed the last plate of food down, Naruto turned to face them and said, "Hey, good morning. Did you all sleep well?" Hinata, Yugito, and Fu all giggled at this, but they stretched and said, "Oh, yes, like a baby." After entering the room, Kimiko said, "Yeah, good morning Naruto," and then she took a whiff of his mouth-watering food. "Wow, it smells so good. You've really gone all out, didn't you?" she said. "Well, I realized I haven't been spending that much time with you girls, so I want to make it up to you," Naruto said with a sheepish laugh. "Well, considering last night, it's a good start, but can you answer me why you didn't come home the day before yesterday Naruto-kun?" Hinata said as the four wives sat down at the table, laughing at his response. Naruto chuckled nervously and began to perspire a little before responding, "Well, you see." After that, Naruto reviewed the events of the meeting with Mei and regarding the potential Fourth Shinobi World War between Oto and Iwa and Konoha. They were curious about what was happening and pleased that Mei and A chose not to accompany Oto and Iwa. Yugito laughed about being the same as ever and was glad to hear that everything was alright. When he related A's remark about what Yugito has in store for him as punishment for leaving without having a brief sexual encounter with her, all of the girls chuckled. Knowing he wouldn't hear the end of it, Naruto let out a sigh. He continued by talking about going to a bar with Suigetsu and the other swordsmen to laugh and have a drink. When Hinata was reminded that Kagura desired a godchild to spoil, she burst out laughing. However, she was aware that would occur later. Like the others, she would adore having a child with Naruto. However, with this potential war hanging over us, now is not the time to become a parent. After telling him this, she assured him that she would tell Kagura to stop working for the time being the next time she saw her. He went on to say that he had to spend the night at an inn after passing out at the bar. He caught a ride from Gamakichi to the port the following morning, where he boarded the subsequent boat to Whirlpool Country, which reached its destination shortly before sunset. They had all finished eating when he finished sharing the news, and Naruto and Hinata began cleaning up. Yugito, Kimiko, and Fu all went to shower and prepare for work today. At that moment, someone knocked on the door. As he approached the door, he turned and muttered, "I wonder who that could be at this time." Before opening it, Eriko, the most intelligent and skilled member of the Konoha-based Uzushio cryptanalysis team, was waiting for him at the door, holding a scroll and prepared to pay attention. This caused him to wonder why she was present, and less. When he said, "I'm guessing you have something to give me that's important," he was being serious. As she gave it to him, she nodded and said, "Yes, it's from the Uzukage about a shocking new development." Naruto sighed in shock at what had transpired after reading the contents of the scroll. "I should have anticipated this stunt from Bakken." Eriko blushed a pale shade of pink at Hinata's attire as she approached Naruto's side. "Naruto-kun, who is it?" "Oh, good morning Eriko. What brings you here at this time?" "I come to bring urgent news from the Uzukage," Eriko replied, attempting to hide her red face. She questioned, "From Mei Sama?" before turning to examine the scroll. As she read the contents, she gasped and realized why Naruto had suddenly become so serious. When he was like this, she blushed. It was shocking, but also understandable, to consider that Konoha had dispatched 2 teams to spy on Kumo and Kiri. Furthermore, both Guy's team and her former Genin team were dispatched. Naruto said authoritatively, "Eriko, gather the council members. Inform them that there is an emergency. Inform them that I will send a shadow clone once my wives and I have more information." Apparently, the lessons learned from Bakken and Perverted Sage have paid off. "Yes," she said, and then, with a gust of wind, she teleported away. When Naruto was in cage mode, all of the shinobi in Uzushio discovered that he was very serious and wouldn't tolerate any nonsense, not even from his wives. Because of this, like his father, had a lot of respect for him. He circled back and said, "Let's go Hinata, we have to inform the others about this. We have a reunion of old friends to get to." She gave a stern look in return and said, "Right," before trailing her husband back inside and shutting the door. They told the others what was going on once they were in the bedroom. None of them liked it at all, and they all knew what to do. Having said that, they all get into their attire and gear. They were aware that things could get worse in light of what had happened, so they should be ready for that. In Kumo, once more, Team Guy stood before the Reikage, surrounded by Kumo Anbu and Mabui. He fixed the team with his intense gaze. They had just been taken to stand trial after spending the night in the hold cell. Neji chose to ask, "What do you plan to do with us, Recounting? Sama?" on behalf of the others. With a stern expression, he gazed at Neji for a moment before closing his eyes and muttering, "Normally, I would have you all imprisoned for trespassing and espionage or even executed." Neji dropped his head, bracing himself for the moment. "But, considering who you are, I will have the Uzukage and the councils decided your fate." Neji looked up, bewildered. Uzukage? Councils? A group of people suddenly materialized in front of them in a golden flash. The others were female, and one was male. The man wore a full-length gown over his regular clothes, and he wore the traditional cage hat with the cerulean kanji for whirlpool on it. The women wore mesh armor, navy blue pants, black low-heeled sandals, and a loose-fitting, long-sleeved, lavender and cream zip-up jacket with the hood up. Around her neck hung a loose blue cloth Uzushio forehead protector. The blonde wore purple fingerless gloves, a chain of white beads wound around her left hand, black pants with a cloud-like design, and a short-sleeved black and purple blouse. She also wore sandals, a kunai holster strapped to her right thigh, and the standard Uzushio forehead protector. In addition, she had a red belt around her waist and bandages on her arms and legs. She crosses her arms over her chest. The wrapping around her hands and elbows is causing her to fidget. Sakura's short sleeveless white midriff shirt, long white armlets, fishnet shorts, and short white apron skirt were all worn by the mint green-haired woman with orange pupilless eyes, grayish blue eye rings, and caramel-colored skin. Her right arm is adorned with an Uzushio forehead protector. There was a cylindrical object wrapped in red on her back. The last was a woman with chocolate brown eyes and light brown hair. She has a green blank scarf around her neck and a gray short-sleeve shirt with a black slit to hold her sword dangling on her back. She wears a black Uzushio forehead protector around her forehead and gray Shinobi class pants that match. Lee called out, "Fu-san," and everyone except Guy recognized the mint green-haired Kunoichi as the Taki Jinchuriki they had met at the second most recent Chunin exam. "Ah, Lee-san, Neji-san, Tenten-san, it's nice to see you again SSU," she shouted as she waved back, astonished to see them too. After Tenten asked, "What are you doing here, Fu? And why are you not wearing a Taki forehead protector? I thought you were from Taki." Neji and Tenten soon recovered from their surprise. Fu smiled sorrowfully and turned away. "Well, a lot of things have happened since the Chunin exams. I was nearly captured by the Akatsuki shortly after the Chunin exams and had my tailed beast extracted." The group was taken aback by this and took note when she smiled at the enigmatic cage. "Then he and his wife saved me and gave me a home in Uzushio where I have made lots of friends and found a husband." The man coughed into his hand after that. "Fu, you can talk with them later. We have important business at the moment." And with a sheepish laugh, Fu said, "Right, sorry Uzukage, Sama SSU. So, it's them, hun?" The cage asked, focusing his hidden gaze on them before turning to face A. "Correct, Uzukage." A nod. As the Uzukage spoke, they both turned to face the team. He said, "So, from what I was told, you came here for 2 reasons," in a voice that sounded somewhat familiar. One would be about the war that could happen. They nodded but said nothing. "Seeing how the 5th Mizukage and the 4th Reikage have formed an alliance, you attempted to get any info about Kumo joining the war, am I right?" His response was again silence. In response, the team erupted. "And, you're here to help find info to locate and kill a former Konoha shinobi that you banished 3 years ago," they said. A grin appeared beneath the Uzukage's hat. He removed his hat and showed himself. When they saw who was underneath the hat, they were taken aback. They were even more shocked when the woman took off her hood and revealed herself to be the former Hyuga clan heiress. "No way," Tenten said incredulously. Neji said, "It can't be," as he couldn't believe his eyes. "Hinata, Sama." Lee questioned, "Naruto-kun? Hinata-san?" He smiled cheekily and asked, "How's it going, guys?" Naruto maintained his smile while everyone was still in disbelief. It was kind of funny, he had to admit. Guy gave them a thumbs up and exclaimed, "Naruto, Hinata, your youthfullness has shined to heights higher than my own. You have become an inspiration to us all." His eyes were blazing. Lee pumped his arm into the air while crying. "Yes, Guy. Sensei. Their youth has outshined us all. We must work harder to increase our youthfullness to their level," he yelled. Naruto leaned over to Tenten and said, "So, they're still doing that, hun? As they continued their juvenile nonsense. Tenten moaned and lowered her head, saying, sadly, yes. Naruto laughs and shucks his head. There are some things that never change. His expression quickly became very stern, and he said, so, you haven't answered my questions yet. Once more, everyone became serious. I'm afraid that we cannot answer that question, Uzukage. Sama, but I can say that we aren't after you. You are no longer a shinobi of Konoha, so there is no reason for us to kill you, Guy said. They didn't miss the tone in his voice when he referred to Konoha as their village, but they kept it to themselves. That's surprising. I thought for sure that the council would want me dead. I do know a B rank and A rank technique that happens to come from your village, he said. Neji stated unequivocally, Naruto, neither Tsunade, Sama nor Hiyashi. Sama would permit that. I know that, but I just thought that they would have overruled her by now. Danzo had sent a couple of root Anbu a few weeks after we left Konoha. He was hoping to secretly force us into his root or eliminate us if we refused. It was one of the reasons that Hinata and I went into hiding, he stated, surprising those who had come before him. With her eyes downcast, Hinata answered, it's true. Neji stated firmly, you can be sure that we're not pursuing you, Naruto-san, Hinata, Sama. They remained silent when I said, so if you're not here for info on me, then you're here about the war that you might be fighting in. Guy looked at him and sighed, saying, you've already answered the first question by answering the second one negatively. We were without knowledge of your involvement with Kumo and Kiri and their alliance, he said at the outset of his speech. Knowing that Kiri and Kumo have been allies for a while, we thought that Kumo would join the alliance that is threatening our village with Kiri joining too if Kumo does. We had to find out if that would happen. So you were sent to spy on us to see if we had joined them in their fight? Guy replied. With his hands, Naruto rested his head, he sighed deeply and turned to face them. They all stared at him as if they were anticipating his statement, under normal circumstances, all of you would be imprisoned. Everyone was shocked when Naruto said, but, that is something for the council to decide. This made Naruto smile. In Uzushiogakure, Kumogakure, and Kirigakure, we do things a bit differently than in Konoha. We follow our own code, our own nindo. As quietly as ever, Neji said, because that's your nindo. Naruto simply stood and grinned. He looked at A. We're taking them with us to Kiri, then to Uzushio. They'll be tried together, he stated gravely. A said, agreed, and nodded. Then Naruto approached Team Guy. He said, come on. Let's go. They all stood up and used Naruto's Flying Thunder God technique to be teleported away. In Kiri, at that moment, the group materialized in a golden flash in front of Mei, the swordsman, and Team Kurinai. Mei smirked and said, right on time, Naruto-kun, to which Naruto replied before everyone's attention was drawn to Hinata's former teammates. Hey guys. He smiled cheekily at them. Naruto maintained his smile while everyone was still in disbelief. It was kind of funny, he had to admit. Naruto became confused when Kiba looked at him after emerging from his daze. What? He inquired. He questioned, are you really Naruto? Are you serious? Are you really doubting me? Kiba smirked and said, then do something only Naruto would do and I might truly believe you. With a sly smile, Naruto put his hands together in a seal and gazed at his erstwhile comrade. As he collected his chakra, everyone stiffened. Naruto gave a brief shout and used a transformation to change into a blonde pigtail woman who was extremely attractive and nude. Kiba had to shield his nose from the streaming blood as the male swordsmen turned their heads away. With Shino's face covered, it was really impossible to tell. Even though Naruto was a woman butt naked in public, his wives and the female swordsmen thought the scene was hilarious. The display and the subsequent reactions had Fu laughing uncontrollably. She batted her eyelashes suggestively and cooed, do you believe me now, Kiba-kun? Naruto smirked broadly as he followed instructions, saying, all right, I'm convinced. Undo that damn technique. Instead, Kiba was occupied with cleaning his nose of blood. When Hinata had stopped laughing, she threw him a hanky. Kurinai said, I can't believe you still use that technique, with a hint of irritation. Naruto grinned and laughed heartily as he remarked, I can't believe it still works. Some of the swordsmen also laughed at this. Then, with the same outcomes, his face. Hardened self asked Team Kurinai the same questions. He then informed them of what was going to happen. When he was done, Naruto teleported the remaining members to Uzushio, while A and Mei had already left with Hinata and Fu to pick up the Kiri and Kumo council for the meeting. In Uzushio and Bu welcomed them to the Uzukage residence, where they were waiting for the cages and the prisoners. He said sternly, take them to the bedroom in the building and watch them. They'll be spending the night here. They exclaimed, "Yes, Uzukage." Sama, while standing at attention. When he stopped, Naruto got up and started to leave for the council room. He said, "It was nice to see you guys again," with a slight head turn. Sansei and Sayuri followed him as he left his office. Sentaro approached Guy with the Anbu and Team Kurinai. "Come on. Let's go," insisted he. They got up and trailed behind Kiri's other 7 ninja swordsmen. Naruto approached Sansei and Sayuri as they made their way to the discussion room. Sansei was not one to fidget, so he felt a question coming from him. Naruto glanced at Sansei and said, "Is there something that you wish to ask, Sansei?" "Yes. I'm not questioning your decision. Making Naruto. But, don't you think that it would be unwise, by not imprisoning them? They're quite notorious for gathering information, this team, and despite the fact that you have the best of the swordsmen guarding them, they could still be a threat." He was serious. Naruto looked forward once more and remarked, "I am aware of that and I see your reason, but you must see their reason as well." Raise an eyebrow and ask, "What do you mean by their reason, Uzukage, Sama?" They face an incredible task ahead of them. They're desperate and have their backs against a wall. They're scratching for any advantage they can get. Even with Gaara's help, they may not pull out of this one like the last time. "I understand, but will they now see you as a threat?" Sansei inquired. "No, because we are staying neutral in this fight." "What?" cried Sayuri. "Are they not your old comrades? Do you really hate Konoha for what they did to you?" Sansei yelled, "Sayuri, how dare you?" in surprise at his teammate's charge. "It's all right, Sansei. To answer your questions, I hold no grudge against Konoha. I may have been angry at them in the past, but that was for about 2 hours, Naruto replied with a smirk. Truth in the matter is Konoha is my past, not Uzushiogakir's. I will not drag the people who have overcome so much into an issue between my hometown and me. As for the comrade thing, the only ones who stuck up for me was Gaara and Hinata. I don't really know where Shino, Kiba, Tenten, Lee, and Neji stand. When I really needed them the most, they weren't there for me. I still do consider them comrades, but we've passed the part of being friends." Sansei inquired, "And Tsunade?" Naruto paused to consider that. Then he turned to the twins and said, "She's the 5th Hokage and someone I consider very special to me. You two have a report to prepare for Mei and myself." "Yes, Uzukage." "Sama," Naruto said as they both vanished. Naruto stood there looking a little dejected. As he told the twins, this was not Uzushiogakir's problem, but in reality, he wanted to go and assist his old home. With a sigh, he went to his scroll room. "I sincerely hope you will pardon me for the choice I am about to make, Bakken." In a bedroom filled with books, Kiba, Shino, Kurinai, Lee, Tenten, Neji, and Guy sat. Kurinai glanced around and realized there was no way out. No windows were present. There were 4 swordsmen on guard at the front door, which was the only way out. With a sigh, she surveyed the library. She approached, pulled out a book, and looked at it with great interest. "He has some great books," she remarked with a hint of affection. "Naruto and reading don't seem to go together," said Kiba. Tenten petted Akamaru while giggling. "According to Shino, you all seem to be taking this situation very calmly." "Come on, Shino, this is Naruto we're talking about. No matter if he's not a shinobi of Konoha anymore, he won't kill us," Kiba said with assurance. "Simply put, I would not think that, Kiba," Shino said. "Naruto is a Kage now and as the Uzukage, he has to protect the people. You know how far he would go to do that." Tenten questioned, "Are you saying that you have no trust in Naruto?" "He is no longer a shinobi of Konoha. You were there when he was talking. He clearly doesn't forgive us," Shino said. "Can you really blame him? After all he did for Konoha, he was still banished for it. He was unstable. Did you forget what he did to Sasuke?" Kiba snarled, "Are you defending that traitor?" The two appeared prepared to engage in combat. Then he said, "All I'm saying is that he should have more control of the 9 tails power when using it. Sasuke was lucky that that was all that Naruto did to him. If Naruto had lost control when used its power, Sasuke would have died that day." Then Kiba responded, "Well, he didn't, so lay off Shino. Besides, he had no choice when Sasuke started using the curse seal. You weren't there with us on that mission anyway. We all had our tough battle to win with those freaks. We were lucky that Tsunade team came to bail us out or Shikamaru, Lee, and I would have died. Even with all the trouble, Naruto still brought Sasuke back and he was banished for it. Maybe if Naruto was still in Konoha, he could have stopped Sasuke's second attempt at leaving the village." Kiba then intensely glared at Shino and asked, "Do you remember what Naruto and Hinata told us earlier?" The only reason that the council agreed to Naruto's banishment was so that they could secretly capture Naruto and turn him as a living weapon like Gaara was. When that failed, they tried to eliminate them, so they could make a new 9 Tails Jinchuriki and prevent other countries from getting the Byakugan. With an eyebrow raised, Shino questioned, "And you believe his word? How do you know he wasn't lying to us?" "Because he had no reason to lie. Even Hinata supported his claim. Do you doubt her word too? She was our teammate. Or did you forget all about that?" Kiba then confronted him. That statement made Shino wince. "That's enough," said Kurinai. The two moved to opposing sides of the room and retreated. As Team Kurinai and Team Guy nodded, they returned to their own tasks. "Look, we are powerless in this situation. Naruto has the ball here and we must approach this carefully. So, for now, we will wait for the decision of the Kiri, Kumo, and Uzushio Council," they said. Shino needed to think carefully. The fact that Kurinai was massaging her stomach went unnoticed as everyone went about their own business. Within the council chamber of the Uzushio, Naruto has been instrumental in the reconstruction of the fallen country in the 2 years since he joined Kumo and Kiri and entered Whirlpool Country. He started by establishing a stable economy. The funds ran low because those who returned received the money that was left over after it was destroyed. He expanded to other nations, primarily Sea Country and Wave. He visited them solely to acquire clients in order to generate revenue for the village. They were employed by both counties, and revenue began to flow in gradually. The leaders of these non-Shinobi nations wanted to join Whirlpool Country after Naruto was crowned Uzukage, but they wanted to keep their national names. After their acceptance, the tiny nation grew to the size of Water Country. A new Uzushio council was established because Naruto was unable to effectively govern his mother's restored village and country on his own. Each of the 3 members had the best interests of the people in mind, despite their diverse backgrounds. Saito Genko was the first. Before being forced to leave when Uzushio and Whirlpool fell during the Second Shinobi World War, he was a member of the old Uzushio Council. He joined Kiri's former council later in life. However, when he defied the 4th Mizukage, he lost his land and material belongings. Without Naruto, Mei, Suigetsu, Sentaro, and Kagura, he would have been executed after his family was sold into slavery and he was given a death sentence. He set out to find his family after the 4th was overthrown. Because he was friends with the leader of Sea Country, Naruto was able to assist him in finding them with ease. He has since sworn allegiance to Naruto. Yamashima Rugen was the second elder. He was a trader who contributed to the restoration of Uzushio. He organized the assigned missions and deals. In order to boost Uzushio's development, he also established trade lines. Until he let himself fall deeply in love with one of the Hibachis, he had no real reason to stay. He didn't want the entire Hibachi clan to come after him. The third was Tazuna, an old friend and Naruto's first real customer as a Konoha genin. It didn't require much persuasion. He assumed the role of an elder, leaving everything in the capable hands of his grandson, Inari. However, he was authorized to assist Inari with large tasks if necessary. Sansei had just completed his council's report. "All right, Sansei, you may leave," Mei said. Sansei left with a bow. Turning to face the councils, Naruto, and Mei regarded each man and woman with disapproval. Rugen frowned and remarked, "So why are we discussing this again? It seems clear that we must imprison these ninja." "With hope," Naruto said, "I'm requesting a favor to let them go." "You can't be serious, Naruto. We've got them dead to rights on trespassing and spying," Tazuna responded. "They will be needed for the war that they will have to fight, should it break out." One of the Kumo members stated, "Even so, we can't just let them walk out without as much as a punishment." "I'm not suggesting that at all," Naruto stated while maintaining his composure for the moment. "I called this meeting to find a different way. A way that as a whole, Konoha feels the punishment, but allows them to return back to their home. Naruto, I know that these people were once friends of yours, but you must put your personal feelings aside. Are you really willing to just let this go after years of healing?" Tazuna was very serious. Naruto simply lowered his head and sighed. He was being closely observed by the Mizukage and Reikage. They and Tazuna were aware of Naruto's desire to visit Konoha and that he had no ill will toward the island. He turned to the other council members and sighed, saying, "Perhaps there is another way." "Are you kidding?" Saito questioned incredulously. He smirked and said, "Please, just listen to me. What if we impose an embargo on Fire Country?" Rugen raised an eyebrow and inquired, "Did you say an embargo?" The councilors and elders appear to be considering it. "Yes, I did, Rugen. If we restrict Konoha from coming to Whirlpool, Wave, and Sea Country, we would easily cripple them in a financial way. I know for a fact that many have come for Fire Country to Wave Country." To change the topic, one of Kiri's council members inquired, what of the spies? Tsunade remarked, well, we do need messengers to relay our decision, grinning a little. The councilors and elders appear to consider the suggestions. Abruptly, Saito raised his voice. While I don't agree with this, I do feel that this will send a message, not only to Konoha, but to the rest of the world as well. Rugen smiled slightly and stated, it is a win-win situation for us. Anything that would cripple someone's finances is a clear message. Tsunade questioned, so are we in agreement? Yes, both of them replied. The other councils looked at them and concurred. The Kages and Naruto bowed to the council. He said, thank you for this, with appreciation. Tsunade said, yeah, just get out of here kid, and waved him away. The elders exchanged glances as he, the Kage, and the other councils departed. Rugen inquired curiously, so what was that about Tsunade? He smiled and said, I think this is the least we can give back for all he has given. With some concern, Saito remarked, we are all thankful for what he has done, but we will be exposed now. Perhaps it is time to stop hiding and show our true strength. On the boundary between Fire County and Wave, on the end of the Great Naruto Bridge stood Naruto, Sentaro, Kagura, and his wives. Both Guy and his team and Kurinai and her team were standing there. Last night, Naruto had told them about the council's decision. Kiba and Guy weren't overly surprised, but Kurinai and Shino were. Before Naruto spoke, the two groups exchanged looks. This is where we part, he said, handing Kurinai a scroll he had taken from his robes. He handed Kurinai another scroll and said, this is the decision handed down from the council. Let Tsunade. Bakken and the council know that the price for letting you go was very high. Also. They turned around and began to leave after he said, this is for Tsunade and Jiraiya eyes only. Only they can see it. If you really push it to make it back, it shouldn't take you more than 2 days. I wish you luck on your journey. Naruto, exclaimed Kiba. Naruto came to a halt and pivoted. If it means anything, I'm sorry. As though he was looking for something, Naruto gazed at him. Kiba stiffened, waiting for an answer. He was not prepared for what he received. Just don't get your ass handed to you like you did when I beat you at the Chunin exams, Naruto yelled, grinning like a child. Kiba demanded sharply, what did you say? Hey, listen here Dobi. That was a lucky win. I know that I would have beaten you if you hadn't farted in my face. Say what you want, the blonde man replied, wearing a smile that never went away. You got beat. Just admit you suck and you'll live happier. What? Kiba gasped, turning red. That's it, I don't care if you are the Uzukage. I'm gonna beat your ass from here to Konoha. Kurinai and Kagura sighed at their childish behavior and yanked the irate Kiba and smiling Naruto apart, saying, you want to go mutt? Let's go Datbeo. The scene made Hinata laugh uncontrollably, and Fu was laughing heartily as well. At that moment, Katsuyu, in miniature, landed in front of them, exhausted. Everyone was taken aback by this, but Hinata was particularly surprised. Surprised, she said, Katsuyu. Sama, what are you doing here? Ah, Hinata.san. Naruto.kun it's good you're here. Kurinai.san. It took me a while to find you. I have an urgent message from Tsunade. Sama, she said as she huffed. Everyone was interested in this. It was shocking what she said. Once more, Naruto's former team is on the hunt for Sasuke and has been given the task of locating and apprehending Itachi in order to assist in returning Sasuke to Konoha. They are in need of reinforcements to continue their pursuit after they have finally located Sasuke. She wants your team to support them, Kurinai.san, and if it's possible Naruto.kun, Hinata.san, can you go with them? I know Tsunade. Sama would really appreciate it, Katsuyu said with optimism. Then everyone looked at Naruto, who was thinking deeply about this novel circumstance.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.